to look at options. And the last word, or the last phrase in this first bullet, the property assure that such property shall not be inadvertently transferred, sold, demolished, substantially altered, or allowed to deteriorate. State agencies and political subdivisions may and are encouraged to lease real property of historic significance to private businesses and nonprofit organizations for purposes which are consistent with the nature of the property. And then where possible, the Oregon Department of Administrative Services shall acquire or lease buildings of historic significance. So you'll see one of the options on the last slide is to remand this back to HBSC. HBSC was, aware of this statute, and that's, I think, part of what was informing their recommendation to you to move ahead with some kind of preservation. It is in the statute. So that doesn't 100% preclude demolition. Other communities have done that, but you do have to go through these steps, work with private parties, see if you can find opportunities to preserve it that way, and then if not, approach the state and to see if the Department of Administrative Services shall acquire or lease the building. So those steps need to be taken first. Here's the cost implications, expenses to date. We've spent around $6,000, $7,000 to evaluate and look at the asbestos and lead paint surveys. In terms of budget resources, we currently have in the LB project a little over $393,000. That is for all of Riverside Park improvements. That includes the maintenance shop and the building, as well as any other larger type capital projects. And then we have $1.7 million of money allocated in the urban renewal plan. We also have received a $15,000 grant from the state to hire an architect to do design services. That is a grant that is made available for historic resource properties, and we can use them to do some mock-ups and some analysis on the architectural side. We haven't started that because we think it's a little premature until exactly what the council decides to do with the building. We're hiring an architect, and we don't know what to tell them to do. So that money does need to be spent fairly soon, but we have informed the state that we're still going through this process. And then we did hear from George Kramer about grants, and he was relatively confident, is how I would interpret it, about the city's ability to get some grant money to rehabilitate the building. So next steps. Staff is recommending the council first make the policy decision about overnight camping. If you decide to allow overnight camping, a public hearing will need to be scheduled for amending Title VI, and you would have a couple of options there. That first one, to limit overnight camping to just Riverside Park for this project, or allow overnight camping in all the parks. If the decision is to not allow overnight camping, then the council will need to make a motion to not proceed with Elk Island Trading on their current proposal. And then that takes us to what some of your other options might be if you decided to go that route. So one would be, if you decide to proceed with our negotiations with Elk Island. Again, the main outstanding item there being figuring out the relationship of the maintenance yard expansion to the yurts and sort of that orientation on the site. And then another option is to reissue the request for expressions of interest, solicit other proposals. You could direct staff to identify funds to repair and conserve the cottage, and I already went over that ORS there that kind of gives the legal framework for that. Remand the topic to HBSC for their consideration, more input, put it on a workshop, or take no action. Stand for any questions.
Thank you, Brad. I will bring it back to council with questions. Do you want to jump in first? Go ahead, Joel. Joel? Okay.
I just wondered, why would an alternative be to allow camping in all parks? That seems ridiculous to me.
Well,
Where did that come from? It certainly didn't come from the Historic Commission.
no, it did not. It did not.
Where'd it come from, Brad?
Well, the alternatives, when you're opening up the municipal code for amendment, I mean, you know, and you have a current code that says prohibited in all parks. The alternative would be to, you know, allow it. But I agree with you. It's not.
Yeah, so it came from city staff who were looking at code amendments and thought that an alternative would be to allow camping in all parks. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes. But remember, this staff isn't recommending things. We're just putting alternatives.
Yeah, well, that isn't even in the realm of the concept of what we're talking about. Anyway, okay.
Yeah, I interpret that as that staff looked at that as the point of least resistance to get from point A to point B if you wanted to change the code. So you change the code across the board instead of in each individual park. But it was not a recommendation.
No.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, Rob?
Actually, to comment on what you just said, Clint, when you said staff looked at that as the point of least resistance, I would actually look at that as the point of most resistance, quite frankly. Least resistance would have been just to do Riverside. Most resistance would have been done to all of it, my opinion. But, so Brad, you just said that it could be up to council to direct staff to come up with funding, I guess, to continue to maintain the cottage and so forth. And, you know, it said in the state law that you just read that the city shall not inadvertently allow this property to deteriorate. And we know for 10 years that's exactly what happened. So I guess my question is, why is it up to council to essentially tell staff to come up with funds to maintain this building when in fact that's the state law? That should have been, I'm asking that should actually be in our budget every year, right? Because that would be following the law. That would have been up to the budget officer to make sure that that's in there, would it not be?
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. One is that law would not have pertained to this project until 2020 because it wasn't deemed a significant historic resource until it was added to the National Register, which was not until 2020. So we're really only talking about this law being pertinent since that point. To your second point, yes, you know, there are funds, of course, that are in the operational budget for the Parks Department to maintain the building. And, you know, I don't think it would, what we're saying is the council needs to direct that those funds be spent. If in fact, you know, you decide today that this should continue to remain a city asset and it's under the responsibility of the Parks Division to maintain that, then we'll continue to look at, you know, preservation. We'll look at some other ways to ensure that it doesn't continue to deteriorate. So that would be part of what we do moving ahead.
Thank you.
Further questions, Rick?
Thank you, Brad. So do I remember over the years when we've had this discussion in addressing lead and asbestos and just the general upgrade and repair of the building, we were tossing around a figure of $500,000. Does that, and also there was the offering because the type of structure it is and the history it has could be available for significant grants?
Are you saying that the 500,000 was a figure that we put out there for what it would take to do the remediation? I don't remember that.
I thought in that price, I thought that was just tossed out there. It wasn't official, an estimate of what it would take to upgrade the building, including remediation. Do you remember of us discussing that amount?
I don't, I'm sorry. It doesn't mean that we didn't
that's
have
fine.
it.
All right, thank you.
All right, further questions, Kathleen?
Nope, just comments.
Thank you. Joel, do you have any further questions? Victoria?
So Is this on the National Registry, or is it considered otherwise significant? Is there a difference between those two determinations, or is it all one big pot?
Yeah, there is a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, and when the Riverside Park got added to the National Registry, there was a number of different, structures within the park, and by the fact that the park itself got added, then any structures within there also become part of the National Register. It's kind of a weird nuance that's in the law, but the building itself didn't get.
Put
I
on
guess
the
my
national-
point is it wasn't like we applied for just that structure, but because it's within the park boundary, it has the same protective rights as though it were in its freestanding.
And then you said that there are other communities who have taken down structures in this circumstance. Do you have any, what would that take? Just generalities, or if you don't know right now, that's fine too.
Yeah, well, it takes, going through a process similar to what we're doing now to demonstrate to the state that the city has made a strong and valid attempt to preserve the building through a private partnership. And then look for other ideas to preserve the structure. So maybe that would be putting money towards it and then using it as another city asset. If at the end of all that, the answer is we really don't have any solutions, then the HBSC would have to hold a public hearing to demolish a structure that's on the register.
And was the, last question then, was the building on the property when the park, when was the park first made that puts it on the National Registry?
2020.
Oh, okay, it was 2020, and the building was there at that time?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yep. The building's more or less original to, going back to the early 1900s. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Eric?
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question in terms of the survey, if it's appropriate to talk about right now. But number 4 there, it says additional comments, and some of the responses from the community that took that survey. Did the staff see any good possibilities or alternatives that would be realistic that the council could perhaps pursue? Or, I mean, because I see a lot of responses here, and I see some of them that say turn it into a coffee house, and others that turn it into a beer garden, whatever. Realistically, is there something that that the staff feels that the council can go pursue?
Right. Yeah. No, and we have not at staff level really taken a hard look or feasibility analysis on those alternatives that were given. So we could certainly do that, but again, a lot of that is dependent on, do we have a private party who's willing to partner with us? And when we put out the original request for expression of interest, we just had the 2 respondents. So, but I guess the short answer is no, we haven't done that at staff level.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Seth? All right, and I have Indra online. Indra, do you have questions?
Yes, going back to the overnight camping, when you say if we're allowing camping in Riverside Park, can we allow just that area for camping and not the whole park, like just the yurts and not the whole park? We can do that, right?
Yes, you could.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, further questions, Joel?
I was just wondering, on the survey, that was a 10% response. How does that compare with other surveys? What kind of response is that? Was that about average? I would guess it's about average, but I don't know. It seems low to me, 10%.
On the neighborhood one?
Well, either
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the citywide one, of course, is much below 10%.
Right.
But the neighborhood one, right, we mailed to 211, got 20 responses.
So the
I
neighborhood
would
one-
say that's slightly higher than what we see on a lot of surveys.
Okay, it surprises me that it's so low. The other question I had, and we can cover it during discussion, the applicant put in some additional information to you, I just happened to get a hold of it, so I shared it with everybody. And that's probably something that, in terms of being open and candid with everybody, we need to make sure that the council's aware of that when we get the information. In terms of how we put that into a question is, I guess there is more information that needs to be part of our discussion. Is that correct?
Yes, are you referring to Mr. Woodard's email on Friday?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and that is attached to the packet, and I did make reference to that at the beginning.
Good.
Yeah, that's on the back.
I'm late coming here, so bear with me.
Sure.
But I did send it, I didn't see it in my email that you'd sent it out ahead of time, and so I went ahead an hour before this meeting and sent it out, which probably isn't adequate time for review, but I did.
All right, last call questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Bradley. Bring it back to council for further discussion. Joel?
So one of the things, and I'll try to be brief, this weekend, it was our 52nd wedding anniversary. That's not the way to start out being brief, but it was a really good time. And one of the things we did was, I've administered public land for over 35 years, and working with the private sector has been a big part of that. And so we started off down at Calican's Lodge, and then we went through the plateau there and the Cascades to Fish Lake. A concessionaire maintains that. Taxpayer dollars do not. The concessionaire takes care of it. They serve the public. They actually do a great job. And we had apple pie there. And there was a lot of business. And Aaron, I think next time you go mushroom hunting up there, you need to stop by there because the concessionaire does a great job. It's in partnership with the government. Then we went through Butte Falls and went over to Prospect, went up to Becky's. Well, at Becky's, it used to be Union Creek District, Ranger District. And all the Ranger District was all government buildings there. There were 5 houses, warehouses, and then the CCC built a lot of them. They're historic. And Forest Service went through budget reduction. Staff generally likes to use taxpayer dollars to maintain these buildings. And they kind of resist putting it in a private, and that's understandable, but it doesn't work over the long term. If you get a partnership with the private sector that maintains these buildings for you, and it also provides some economic activity over the long term, perhaps not in the short term, perhaps not something that we want to do this year, but that is a thing that staff tends to resist. I'm not just talking about city staff, I'm talking about all government employees. Government does not do a good job at making profit. I'm sorry to say that. And I've been part of government for a long time. The private sector, when they put in a proposal, they don't do it because they're just spending taxpayer dollars and they got the dollars to spend to make a nice public thing. They do it because they're going to make money off of it and serve people. And the way they make money is by serving people that people are willing to pay for and have it be nice, whether you're a restaurant or whatever. And that's what the public or the private sector does. So we went up there and we sold, we didn't sell, we leased all of Union Creek Resort, what used to be the District Ranger, all those buildings, there's 10 of them, and including Becky's restaurant, what is now Becky's Restaurant. We went up to Becky's Restaurant and ate, and it was packed. In the summertime, tour buses from Japan stop there and eat. The resource that they have up there is not the Rogue River and the jet boats, it's the entranceway to Crater Lake. When I looked over across the street where all the government buildings were that are now leased out to the public, it was amazing. It was just a pool of economic activity of people enjoying their public lands. And so not only did it pay for the maintenance of the buildings, instead of them being demolished, it provided jobs. So next time you go by Becky's, keeping it short, this is too long, buy huckleberry pie. They're the only ones that have it with wild huckleberries. And they're a private company.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Can you bring it full circle to your point? Because I'm still confused
The
about your
first
point.
full circle is to spend taxpayer dollars to maintain the caretaker's cottage is a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you.
And the way to, if you want to preserve your history, which is important, you gotta serve with the private sector, and you got to have a purpose and meaning that improve other people's lives through a recreational experience or whatever. And we got to overcome. I had to overcome staff resistance to doing that because they like to increase taxpayer dollars to get the job done.
Okay, I think I understood your point. Any further discussion? Kathleen?
Well, what I'm hearing loud and clear from the public is that they do not want camping. They do not want overnight housing in the park. I mean, line after line, this is what I'm reading here in all of the surveys. And a few of them are quite for demolishing the building. So I'm listening to the public, and I'm not in favor of housing or overnight camping in this park.
Thank you. Further discussion? Victoria?
I wrote a few of those points that kind of echo what Kathleen said. It looks like 65% if you add the neutral or not important together. How important is it that it be preserved? So that's, and then 75% say they do not want overnight accommodations in Riverside Park. So it's exceedingly clear that what that answer is. And so I also would be listening to the public on this matter. They don't want it, and so the public should get what they want there. And I also, just a little bit to what Joel was saying, Mary's is such an iconic spot. I mean, people, but it's also on the way to Crater Lake, yep. which is a destination that people from all over the world go to. And they do here too, into our little city, but I don't think they would come directly. They might come to do the jet boats or something like that from all over the world, which they do, but I'm not sure they would come for camping in Riverside Park. So I think there's a difference between those two sorts of, but I understand what you're talking about when you say that, private business in maintaining some of these historic, that it shouldn't be overlooked, but I would say that these two are in completely different categories. But I do understand your point. But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that the survey's pretty darn clear. And so I think we should honor the survey, and I would not be for overnight camping. Thank you.
Further discussion, Eric?
So I would agree with what was discussed about the survey. The public is saying they don't want it, regardless of it being isolated to Riverside. Also, what Joel was talking about there with the private sector getting involved, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out, but it definitely works better than what government usually does. One thing that I find interesting is the whole model of the Airbnb with the yurts to me, it seemed to be very pricey, and I think it would be hard pressed to find anybody that would be willing to pay a price to live to stay at night in a yurt for that amount of money. I believe it was over $100 a night. I remember seeing something in our emails from another Airbnb owner that had written us, mayor and council, that said that there's no way that that spending model would work. Specifically, the amount of money, they are having a hard time getting people to get their Airbnb. Basically, they're having a hard time getting people to come in and stay overnight at their Airbnb. What would be the difference, at that price? That's more than what they were paying for. Anyway, this was in an email. So the point was made that the prices would be way too high. Nobody would want to stay there, and the city would have to compete with other issues that are in the park, whereas the problems go with the drugs and the homeless and all that other stuff that goes along with that. Why would anybody want to stay in the park with all these problems? And obviously, we do have the survey results here as well that we had all talked about previously. I think the best possible thing to do would be to find an alternative to keep this historic building put in place, and maybe we can. I mean, I saw a coffee shop in there. I saw a beer garden. I saw many other interesting alternatives, and I don't know which one of them would be realistic, and that's why I asked the question, does the staff have any idea of what would work for these alternatives? But that's where I stand right now. Thank you.
Further comments? I got Indra online, and then Rob. Indra?
Yes, sadly, I think if this discussion was before 2020 or earlier, people wouldn't have such problems with camping in the park. And so I understand the hesitation because of all the homeless and the trash camping that we've had. So I understand the hesitation to have any camping in the park. But I think if you do look around to other state and county parks where there are private public partnerships, it works very well. And then I was speaking with talked a while back, the mayor of Phoenix, they're developing their parkway along the river. The more activity you have, wholesome activity, the less homeless and problems you have. I mean, so if we do something with it, we're not going to have the amount of homeless and drugs and garbage going on that we have now. I truly believe that, and that's been borne out. I am totally in favor of preserving the caretaker cottage. I think we need to, tradition and heritage is very important, and especially in a town like Grants Pass. So whatever we do, I would be for preserving the cottage. And as Joel said, really the best way to preserve it was zero taxpayer dollars, because taxpayer dollars, or taxpayers don't want to continually pay money to support this, is to do a public-private partnership. So I believe that is a must. And staff can't come up, and we can't come up with what we think is nice. Oh, a coffee shop or a museum or this or that. It has to be the private sector, someone who's willing to put their money where their mouth is and make an offer to do it. And so when we put this proposal out, we had 2 offers only, one, which is sad. I wish we had more to choose from. We had 2, one of which was not viable, is my understanding. So we were left with 1. I think now that we're speaking of it and we've had the surveys and people are more aware of that, of what we're looking to do, that perhaps extending or putting out another proposal would draw more interest maybe, and we would have more selection of what to do. So maybe that would be a solution to the problem. Those are just some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Further discussion, I got Rob, Joel, and Victoria. Rob?
Yeah, I think Indra makes a great point that it really doesn't make much difference of whether or not staff thinks there's a viable alternative. If we're talking viable, we're talking about who's going to pay for it, who's going to see it as a profit-making thing, and that's up to the private sector person or entity that's going to do that. If they think they can do it and they pull it off, it makes no difference really what the rest of us think of whether or not it's viable. Socially acceptable is a different question, but I think that from the survey, one of the largest points I think we probably all see is that the last survey, I guess, is 95 out of 169 people actually think it's reasonable for the city to spend money on this project. So obviously the survey respondents are in support of that. But the other thing that I'm wondering, we see Bernie and Ward in the seating today, and I'm assuming they didn't just come to listen, and I just want to know if they have anything that might help clarify this for council, because I know you guys got to be here for a reason. So is that appropriate?
You want to ask questions, or you want their...
I don't necessarily have a specific question, but I think they probably have something they might want to add. So I guess that would be my question. Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, hi, guys. Thanks for letting me speak. It's been a busy last few months. The Caretaker Cottage is a beautiful little cottage there, and I go by it every day from M Street to where we're converting the connexes to the Redwood Highway, where we'll have Parker's Place Village. And every day when I drive by there to go back and forth to the projects, I'm looking and saying, would this be a better looking project if the yard was expanded all the way out to the street? And I have to say no. A lot of it I look at and say it's just a caretaker cottage, who really cares anyway? But when I look at it this way, it's like, okay, I know what we can do with it. I know we can make it attractive to the community. And when I drive by there, I'm like, I know that if an example of a yard was put in comparison with yurts and a caretaker's cottage in a survey, I can't see where anybody down that street or any place else would want that to become a yard for the maintenance yard. And you saw, I think on the next to last slide or two slides back, how far that yard might be expanded. And so I think what our project would do is it would disguise that or hide the yard, even if the yard was extended a little bit to where they needed it. Then our project could go around that, where the city, the people driving by, the people on the bike path or the sidewalk would be able to see something nice, not a yard. And then a lot of the survey, so I think the survey, and I love the staff in this city. I mean, they've worked really well with us. But I think the survey was kind of tweaked a little bit towards not telling all about what it could be, the alternative of here's how it could be expanded into this yard with equipment that's going to be running early in the morning and things like that. And here's what it could look like with the yurts in a caretaker cottage. And so I would just ask that you guys look at that part. And then the part about Airbnbs, it's the location. I mean, location of Riverside Park, that's a beautiful park. You guys may not understand how beautiful your park is unless you go to Roseburg and you look at our parks. And then you'll see all of the mess. But you guys have done a great job of getting these parks clean. And I know the word camping, I know that word myself from up there. Camping in the parks is just a terrible word to me. And But, you know, we're talking about glamping, we're talking about something that's nice, we're talking about people will be able to go in here, people will have reunions here, people will have anniversaries here, people will have business retreats here, those kind of things. As far as Airbnb history, I probably have one of the best Airbnb histories out there as far as promoting properties. We have a school and a church in a little town of only 200 people in southern Illinois. In the last 3 months, almost every room we've had or every bed has been booked in a town of 200 people. So it's just location and the need. And I believe Riverside Park, with all the stuff that Rogue River has for people, Tap Rock Cafe or the restaurant there, places for them to go to, I think it will be a draw. And people will want to be there. And then by having those things there, then we'll be able to improve Caretaker Cottage, we'll be able to save it, we'll be able to create something that's long-term to be able to be financially feasible to keep it, and it'll be something for the community to enjoy. I answered the RFEI because you guys wanted expressions of interest of people that had ideas, and I thought I had a good idea, and that's why I brought it. It's, you know, it's up to you guys all, you know, if you really want it, and you know what we want to do. And I'm not going to have hurt feelings either way. I mean, I just see it something that we can do, and I would like to be a part of it. I'm trying to think, as you go through all of the different survey results, there's a lot of different numbers in there, and almost everybody was saying that up to $50,000. You know, so if somehow we could curve the cost of the Caretaker Cottage to $50,000 for the roof and structural repairs and things like that, and then that we take responsibility for the other cost, I think that's kind of a good way to go. We could use the survey numbers like that, but I really think the survey numbers at 10% of the people that got sent out to, and then them not all knowing what the alternative could be in that location, it's kind of tweaked the wrong way for people to get the right impression of what's there. So again, I believe from an Airbnb perspective, because I'm not just a homeless guy thing, you know, providing how we're going to deal with homelessness. Airbnb and building and historic restorations was where I started doing things. And I think we have a good opportunity here, and just, you know, hopefully you guys choose to do it. If not, let's, you know, keep looking for other alternatives to save that building. Thank you.
Thanks. So Ward, you want to give us a little context on the historical value of this property?
Absolutely, thank you.
Sir.
First of all, I think that the word camping is a misnomer. I think it's overnight lodging, and I think there's a difference. Camping is what the bicycling group that's coming into the park that the council approved a while back for, I don't know, 150, 200 campers in tents. That's camping. This is overnight lodging, and it really is the fact that in 2020, the Historic Building and Sites Commission, you know, started pushing to make Riverside Park a national park. I don't know if you realize how huge that is, but it's huge. Designated by the National Park Service as a National Register Park for one of our local parks. That's huge. It's huge to tourism, and people these days are seeking a special experience when they take a vacation. They are wanting to do something different, and that's like a big thing today. Let's do something really different. Do they want to go stay in an Airbnb in somebody's backyard in a subdivision in Grants Pass? Maybe not, but do they want to stay in a National Register park designated by our National Park Service that is a beautiful park? I think so. I think it would be very popular, and I think that we have a big opportunity here for an amazing public-private partnership. I think it will make the neighborhood safer. I think our police chief has weighed in on the fact that we've heard that areas of town that are run down or you know, blighted or whatever tend to draw more homeless, and I see that downtown and around town. And so the more it's improved right there, the less problem that we will have with homeless hanging out there, and the area would be fenced off with an attractive fence instead of a chain link or an industrial looking fence. So I think the neighbors, you know, surveys really are dependent not only the information that people are given in the survey, but also the information that they're not given. And in this case, I think one of the most important factors would be a graphic of what the expanded maintenance yard is going to look like and how beautiful that's going to be for the neighbors to look at, versus a nice area that's manicured, that has a nice attractive fence, and that's well taken care of. And then I don't care for that yellow color that I saw in the proposal on the cottage, but that would go before the Historic Building and Sites Commission to be discussed for colors. And but anyway, I think the intent there was that they just wanted to show that it was going to be brightened up. And so I think that there's a lot of reasons to take a look at this. And I think going back to the neighborhood and to showing them what the difference it would look like as a maintenance yard versus what this could look like. And I also think that there are some tweaks that could be made. That really hasn't been discussed, but I would be for, I think the fact that Mr. Woodard has some experience already with overnight lodging, I think that's a good sign. And I think it would be worthwhile if you would like to consider remanding this back to the Historical Building and Sites Commission to discuss any concerns from the council and or staff. Brad, mentioned that in some cities they have managed to tear these kinds of things down. I'd like to just point out in more cities they've managed to save them because they've said that especially in a national park, a listed park, that a caretaker's cottage, believe it or not, even though it's not a mansion and it's not significant, it's one of our most common styles of housing in Grants Pass, and that's the cottage style of housing. And so, Grants Pass couldn't afford a big mansion for the caretaker that shaped that park and made it beautiful over all the years. But it is in many parks and national parks throughout and state parks in Oregon and other states, the caretaker's cottage is landscaped nicely and it's restored. And here we have a chance to not only do that, but also to repurpose it and bring income to the city that could be go back into parks and public safety. So I would like to see if possibly if the council would be interested in remanding it back to HPSC for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, by the way, Rick, I think your question earlier was what was the number and that number to do the exterior renovations on the foundation, the roof, et cetera, as I recall, was right around $235,000. Okay. Anything else?
Further discussion? Thanks, Ward. You guys got any questions? Okay, Eric?
Ward, thank you for the discussion there. Sure. What would can you go over exactly what would be considered if the decision was remanded back to the committee?
What would be the what?
What would you be discussing? What specifically would be
any concerns that were raised in the survey, for sure, and then just potential options that might be more appealing to the neighborhood and to the residents of the city and to the council and to everyone. I just think that I think basically it's a good proposal, and but I think that there could be some tweaks. Maybe there's another structure. Like historically, it's important to note that there was overnight lodging in Riverside Park, late 20s, 30s, into the early 40s. There were little cabins, and it was called a motor court. It was very popular because the park was a beautiful setting, and so people would stay in those cabins. So there has been overnight lodging historically, and I think that's significant as well. But it's just those kind of things. Maybe cabins that are similar to what they looked like back in the 30s or whatever, with a little more amenities than they probably had back then, would be something that could be a different look than a yurt. So just things like that, but mainly the concerns and maybe some possible suggestions. None of that has been discussed at all, and I think this would be a good time to do that with Mr. Woodard, since he's the one putting up the money, and, you know, is that a sensible alternative or not?
Thank you.
All right, you have a question for Ward or discussion? Okay,
Okay.
Joel,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Ward.
Bernie, you don't need to get up yet. You may not want to.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask you, you sent an email to Brad, and the rest of the council probably hasn't read that, and there was an idea. Could you share that with us, what you said in that email? And that was presented to us here on the dais?
Yeah, that was like Friday.
Yeah.
3 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of it was, well, I think what I did was went through the surveys and did an assessment of all, I put in one of these legal AI deals, and it brought up everything and said, okay, this is how you should handle this, this, and this. And it came out, I think that most of the people in the community was, you know, if you look at all the surveys, they wanted to save the cottage or the caretaker's cottage. And so, and then there was, you know, then you look at all the money, you know, a lot of people, I can't remember the numbers, but it was over half, you know, that was interested in putting so much money into it. Some people said that the money didn't even matter, just restore the cottage. But I come up with a number that was like $50,000. And to answer, I can't remember, it was one of you guys' question about the city staff has a little bit more trouble coming up with fixes because there's so much more money involved with things when you have to do it through public prevailing wages and things like that, where private industry, when they're a partner, they can do it for a lot less money. So something that might cost $250,000 through all of that prevailing wage stuff, and we do that all the time, like for the city of Eugene, and you know, those costs go way up because of all the different things that you have to do, but private industry doesn't have to. So, you know, I think that cost in that email I sent was like, well, maybe we keep the cost down to like $50,000 that would be part of the city's input, and then go after potentially grants together for additional funds, but that we cap it at 50,000, and then that we also try something like, okay, let's try this for 2 years, or whatever the amount of time would be of putting some yurts out there, you know, because they're not permanent, that we could remove them if there was a lot of public backlash and it didn't work. But I think that was basically the gist of that email was, you know, these different variations that we could create. And like Ward just brought up, you know, maybe not yurts, but we go to something like, you know, little cottages that look like the caretaker cottage, you know, for people to stay in. You know, that there could be those kind of, we could create some variations here to see how we could, you know, you're never going to make everybody happy. We all know that. But that we can make as many people as happy as possible and not use much of the city's money for the repairs. That's the things I think I was looking at, Joel. Does that answer? Okay, thank you, sir.
Bernie, a quick question. How big is that yurt area? Is that like a quarter of an acre, or what? The area that you'd be dealing with? How big is it?
How big is the area of what?
That you'd be dealing with the yurt
Oh,
park?
it varies because of the sidewalk, but it's 60 feet by about 100, 6,000 square feet, and I think that's what Bradley said. 6,000 square feet of area that the
It's
yurt would
closer to
be
an
in.
eighth of an acre or something like that.
Yeah, what is that?
A seventh
Yeah.
of an acre or something like that. Well,
Yeah,
quarter would be 11,000. A quarter would be 11,000, but
And Riverside Park is, I think, 30-some acres.
Right.
It's not that big a spot, and it's right nestled against the caretaker cottage. But yeah, that's the
thank you.
size.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have questions, or we're in discussion, so are you ready to go discussion? Okay, so got Victoria for the further discussion, and then Indra online. Victoria?
Bradley, you were talking about George Kramer and a grant for rehabilitation of the building, but I missed, was that the same grant that you were talking about, the $15,000 grant, or is there money available elsewhere that is larger than that?
Yeah, it is a different pot of money. The 15,000 that we got is state SHPO.
For the architectural
For the
design.
architecture, right. But what George Kramer was referring to are combination maybe of some private foundations, as well as maybe some other state or federal money. But that would be different than the 15,000.
And it seemed like when you were giving the previous presentation that it seemed clear that this would be the type of project that would be eligible for that kind of rehabilitation?
Yeah, there certainly are a lot of examples, both
that
on.
also are like that.
Where you've gotten some, financial assistance. I think the number he threw out, I think was $100,000 that he thought was kind of a target for this size project for a grant, so.
Okay, and can you give me somewhat of an example of why they would do that? Just to preserve the building, not for any particular commercial use or anything like that?
Well, these would be foundations or agencies that have a very specific historic preservation focus.
Right.
So that would be the reason, would be to.
So in that case, I remember when we were talking about this a while back, it was like, one of the ideas was, I think it may have been Joel that said it, like a museum or something like that. So if there were to be a grant for this cottage for that, that might be an example of and it would serve all of the public, probably. Is that a good guess?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good example.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Mm-hmm. And then just as a comment, I just wanted to, because we're kind of going around talking about different things about, the survey and it was this or that. But once again, this survey is exceedingly clear about the topic that's right in front of us. And the public is absolutely clear on whether or not they want overnight camping there. And the public has said that, no, they do not.
All right, further discussion, I got Indra and then Rob. Indra?
Okay, so when we did there was a walkthrough I heard of the caretaker cottage. Was that walkthrough talking about the potential with the yurts and what that would be, or was it simply a walkthrough to see the historical cottage?
It was the latter. Yeah, no, there was no yurt proposal at that time.
Okay, and did the survey show photos or anything, explanation of what the quote camping would look like?
No.
Okay, so I'm kind of thinking that the public, yes, don't want overnight camping, but I'm kind of thinking that people maybe don't even really know what the proposal is to some extent. And so I'm wondering if there's a potential to have like a town hall at the site where people can come, and Bernie could be there and just like visually see what would happen, and talk about the proposal, not just the preservation of the cottage, so people could see. I'm wondering if that would be a good idea before we decide on anything, and then we can get input at the town hall, as you often do, input on whether, people like the yurts or cabins, or, the historical people could be there as well, commission. And it could kind of come together to educate the public on what this specific idea would look like. That's just my suggestion.
Further discussion, I got Rob and then Joel and then Victoria and Eric. So Rob.
So I'm trying to I just want to be clear. I think I kind of know where I'm leaning on this, but to be clear, so Brad, when Victoria asked you about the, could potentially one of these grants be used to remodel or retrofit Caretaker's Cottage as a coffee shop or whatever, and, you answered yes, of course, right? Right? So, but but a grant would never, ever cover operating expenses, correct? It wouldn't be covering operating expenses at a coffee shop, it would be just the conversion. So.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
basically Bernie's proposal is completely different because he's handling the operating expenses, right?
Right. No, of the ones that we looked at, those are very capital focused, very just,
Right.
yeah, focused on the capital project itself.
Right, thank you. And, also to one other point, and then, when we say that the survey was very clear, the last survey, support overnight accommodations in Riverside Park, no 128, yes 41. Did people envision tents or whatever throughout the park? Or was it specific? Did they actually envision one specific project in less than a quarter of an acre of the 32-acre park? That's not at all clear. They answered, but the way this is written, it would appear as if there could be tents anywhere in the park, as opposed to one specific less than quarter of an acre in 32 acres. So while it might appear on face value that the survey was really clear, the question wasn't very specific, quite frankly.
Further discussion, I got Joel, Victoria, and Eric. Joel?
Well, I've done a lot of public interactions, and it's very important that they are heard. And so what Victoria says is very important. And given, I also look at 90% of the people didn't care enough to even respond. And if you put the people that didn't care instead of in the anti and the pro, it would skew the statistics the other way. But what I think we need to do is not move ahead at this point in time, but put it back to the Historic Commission and look at the alternatives. We got to make sure we thoroughly understand the public input, and we got to make sure that the public understands what the proposal is, because I'm sure some don't, and I'm sure some do. And the other thing is, we got this, I'm not sure this is the right word, but a hangover from the unsheltered living in the park. And it drives people's fears, and it kind of shuts off the upper cerebrum, and becomes a battle of life and death. And I'm certainly not going to die. And so I think at this point in time, given the public feedback, and given we got a good resource for us to do the staff work, and that's the commission, and we got some good private sector things. I think we've come a long ways, and I don't want to spill the beans by moving too fast in the last quarter. So that's where I would be. Is I would refer it back to the Historic Commission for options and alternatives, and encourage Bernie to stay involved if you'd like, and see what would happen, and make sure we're legal, so that we do what's right.
Okay, so you guys have some action on the table to recommendation to remand this to the HBSC committee. Further discussion, I got Victoria, Eric, and Rob. Victoria?
Well, did you make the motion then? Was that? Oh,
I wanted to hear your
okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad idea to take it back to the HBSC for another recommendation. However, I think that added to that directing staff to identify the funds, because if there is a significant amount of money for historical preservation for a building, that would just leave it, and just a little bit of a correction, I did not mention a coffee shop. What I specifically said was a museum. I don't know if that's what the HSBC would like, or the council would like, but that is what I said was a museum. So if the building could be preserved, historical building could be preserved, and it was not paid for at all by the city, I think that's a really, really good option. And if it were, this is my opinion, if it were turned into some kind of a museum or something where the public could go in and see part of the historic aspect of Riverside Park, then that would open it up to a lot more of the public, and the building would be preserved. So if you were going to make a motion to reprimand the topic back to the HSBC, I think I would add a friendly amendment to also direct staff to identify the funds for the historic preservation of the building through grants.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, so I would agree with a lot of that. But when I was talking about directing staff for number 4 there, for those suggestions, I wasn't talking about private sector. I mean, they could be involved. What I was referring to was along the lines of what Victoria was talking about with those extra funds that are available. Are any of those suggestions that are on the number 4 answers something worthwhile looking at to be able to get those funds as well? So that was part of what I was talking about. And then as far as, you know, I know Bernie's got his hands full with Parker's Place, Mint, and all that. Maybe a different alternative would be worth going towards, having another RFP go put through and figure that out, because I'm sure he's very busy. But as far as the camping thing goes, I know that camping is not a very good, it's a sore subject with the city, because a lot of people don't like it in our parks, and they're as Joel was talking about, they've got a hangover on that. But as far as the survey goes, I remember something on that page that showed pictures as well on the city website. So there were things there that identified what it would look like. It wasn't just people answering questions. They had the website, the city website, to go to and look at a lot of these different pictures. So I don't know if people were just blindly commenting on the answers like what Rob was talking about, but I think that you know, people know what they're answering, and it's clear that they don't like it. So that's what I have to say.
Final discussion, Rob.
Yeah, I would agree with Joel that I'm not ready today to support an ordinance that would allow camping, I shouldn't say camping, overnight lodging in even a quarter of an acre of our 32-acre park. And again, that's not a question that's not even, I guess, a subject that the public was even given a chance to understand due to the wording of the survey. But I'm not even willing to move forward and allow camping for even in that quarter of an acre or overnight lodging. But the fact that no matter what grant we get we've been looking at, I guess, grants for, 3 years now at least, I've never heard once about operating expenses. And that would be the beauty of this particular proposal with Bernie, is that he's covering the operating expenses, in addition to which, I remember from our last workshop on this, most of the remodel, he was going to cover the expenses for that as well. So we didn't need a huge grant from anywhere. We can go back and look for them, it'd be great to get them, but that wasn't what was being talked about. We were being taught, I think Bernie even today said, maybe keep the expenses even below 50,000, even if that's a very, very low figure. But I know that the overall remodel, he was looking at bearing the brunt of that, and that's just to be clear. But I think that, right now, is overnight lodging in Riverside Park socially acceptable? I don't think it's a great time to be really acting in that moving forward with that, because and I don't want to demean Bernie. He's working really hard on what he's doing. I think that a lot of people might feel a lot better about this possibility if this was 6 months or a year down the line, because Bernie's not just building out the Parker's Place, he's also responsible for running the security and an aspect of running it. So when we actually see that he can pull that off successfully, and I'm pretty darn sure that he will, I think people might have a better feeling about another project in our park. We've had some people that really said some, I'll say, completely unbased and irrational things at the podium, saying things like, and we all heard it and it's on tape, saying Bernie was a crook, he's going to take our $1.2 million, he's going to go back to Roseburg. We even had sentiment on the council in that direction. So there are still people that have questions because they haven't seen Parker's open yet and they haven't seen it being run yet. And I think that I personally would feel better, because I think that the public might feel better once we saw a successful track record along those lines, because it does overlap, because we're dealing with some of the same homeless people that were in the park are going to be in Parker's. There is an overlap there. So I'm not ready to move forward today to approve overnight stays in a small portion of the park. I think that there's a lot of validity there, and the private-public partnership that Joel was talking about would be perfect there. But I'm not willing to go there today, which I guess would mean that I would be supporting remanding it back to HBSC to see if they could fine-tune this. But for me, really, I would like to see some time pass, because I'd actually like to see Bernie succeed and have the public know that everything is doing well at Parker's Place before we talk about going back to the place that gave a lot of us, and I'm not using the term lightly, but it gave a lot of people who live near the park PTSD for 8 years that we've been dealing with this. So that's what we're dealing with, a PTSD situation on our parks right now, and I'd like to get past that before we then moved forward to do overnight stays in that park that caused us so much grief. But that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Okay, you guys have been going around with this for almost 2 hours.
3 years.
You guys need to get to the point. The staff is actually asking you for action. We do have action on the table. I'll get to you in 1 second. I just really got to get this point across, because at 1:45, we're going to hit our 2-hour mark, and I personally have to leave because I have an obligation. So, further discussion? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
So I want to.
Please do.
In light of the fact that I think Airbnb is saturated, there is so much Airbnb out there, and for all different kind of prices, and only for a certain part of the population. So I think to incorporate this proposal for more people, I would be in favor of reissuing that RFEI to solicit new private partnership proposals to preserve the cottage.
I have a friendly amendment to that. If you would add directing staff to identify the funds to repair and conserve the cottage to that, so we can do both of those things at the same time. And then from there, after those two things are done, to remand it back to the HSBC. So there are 3 things to that. So I guess I had 2 friendly amendments.
Okay, that'd be fine. Yeah, I think that it would be nice to know if the funds were available to repair it. And yeah, I'd like the input of the HBSC as well. So we can add those.
Can you restate your amendment with,
Okay.
Can you restate your motion with the friendly amendments, please?
Okay. So I'd like to reissue the FREI process to solicit new private partnerships, simultaneously direct staff to identify funds to repair and conserve the cottage, and also get more input from the HBSC.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to reissue an RFIE in regards to the Reed's Cottage. Additionally, directing staff to identify funding sources and remanding this back at the same time to Historical Buildings and Sites Committee. Correct? Correct. And we have a second? Further discussion. Indra was online. Did you have any further discussion, Indra, or were you able to hear the motion?
Yes, no further discussion.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the table? Joel?
I was thinking instead of reissuing it today, it might be a waste of time, and it's one alternative that the Historic Commission could recommend. But have them do the staff work for us and then have it come back to us, and not choose an alternative at this point in time that the city should proceed.
Okay, so you have a motion on the table to reissue the RFEI, remand it to the Historical Building and Sites Commission, as well as direct staff to look for funding. With a second, that is on the table right now. Further discussion. Rick?
I appreciate what Joel's saying. The Cottage has been out there for 3 years trying to find a solution, and I think it'd be more prudent to go to the HBSC at this time, and then if they make a recommendation of reissuing, then to pursue that course. Thank you.
Seth?
Yeah, I would be in favor of that versus reissuing the RFEI right now.
Rob?
Yeah, to reissue the request without, before staff might have an idea of how much funding is available, I think if staff's able to come up with how much funding might be available, that could potentially attract different respondents to the survey. So I think it should go to the HBSC first, and possibly with staff having more information as far as how much money could be available. At that point, we can issue a more specific request for a private partnership.
Okay, I appreciate everybody trying to weigh in and get their opinions in here. I'm going to reiterate it one time. We have a motion on the table to reissue an RFEI. At the same time, remand this back to the Historical Sites and Building and Sites Commission, board, and direct staff to look for additional funding. All three of those things in this motion are to happen all at the same time. Victoria?
Then Kathleen, given what other councilors have said, would you like to possibly even further amend to do the first two things first, direct staff, and then reprimand back to the HBSC, and then that will trigger?
The motion, as I understood it, was to do all of three things at the same time.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
I'll amend it to take off the reissuing of the RFEI. We want to direct staff to identify the funds to repair and conserve, and we want to bring it back to the HBSC. So I will remove the reissuing of the RFEI.
Victoria? Okay, so the original motion has been tabled. The new motion has been placed on the table, which is to remand this to the Historical Buildings and Sites Commission, as well as direct staff to identify funding that would be able to be in place for the restoration of this project. So, with that being, does anybody else have any other questions? Discussion. All right, we're going to go into a vote. Kathleen?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Victoria?
Yes.
And Joel?
Yes.
Okay, so, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, and Indra, how do you plead?
Yes,
Thank you, Indra, I apologize, I'll have to try to keep getting reminded that you're online. Okay, so staff, do you have direction?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the Plaza use regulations.
Do you want to start, or do you want me to just?
Did you want to do the back? No, it's fine, either way, it doesn't really matter to me, but,
I didn't pull it up, I just completely blocked it
yeah,
out of my brain.
that's okay. I won't let you do that, sorry. I'll sing this.
Good morning. So we've talked about the Plaza quite a bit. This one is moving us to the next stage of this conversation, and that's once it's done, what then? In terms of how do we actually operate and what policies do we want to put in place for the use of the space? So that's really the focus of today's conversation. I'm going to just have a couple of slides with the background, having been here kind of from the beginning, and then Dana, as our URA manager, is going to step up and kind of handle the bulk of this, which relates to the amenities and recommended uses piece. So it does relate to the council goal of economic growth. And really quickly on the background pieces, so this plaza was included right from the beginning in the urban renewal plan back in 2016. 2020, we hired Terrain Architecture, which is Jim Love, to really take the lead on preparing what is a concept to kind of hybrid, to create a hybrid space, because I think that was pretty clear from the beginning. We wanted, yes, both parking and a place that could be used by the community. So Terrain Architecture did that. There was a lot of public outreach and several different workshops over the course of a couple of years to kind of talk through those. Engineering plans were finalized last year, and we did put it into your 5-year implementation strategy as well. The construction schedule is listed there. December of 25, Vitus Construction was selected to be the contractor on the project, and then notice to proceed in March. Estimated completion time is at the end of next month, June 30. These are some of the amenities that have been included. You've seen these a few times, so I won't go into much detail, but the scope that we're talking about today, and you'll see from Dana, there's really 2 different tiers that we're talking about. Let me pull this other, so the plaza is here, with the alleyway being on the north side, of course, and then 5th and H below. The whole scope of this project is both the intersection at G and 5th and the intersection at H and 5th, as well as the reconstruction of both sides of 5th Street. So you'll see options to consider for leasing and using just the plaza itself without closing down 5th. But there's another option where 5th could be closed down. As you may recall, we have bollards, sleeves for bollards that are being constructed right now, that are being put into 5th right at the intersection of H as well as up at G. So those bollards would essentially serve as the closure. So that you would not be seeing traditionally, we've brought in the K-rails and kind of put those concrete K-rails up, which are very ugly, frankly. So these will be really attractive. There's going to be bollards, permanent bollards in place along the plaza on 5th, but we have in the right-of-way, both in the alley and, as I mentioned, both at the intersections to put those in place. So that closure mechanism is kind of built into the project. And here's the 2 tiers. Outlot only would be one of those conversations, and then tier 2 is looking at the closure of 5th at G, the closure of 5th at H, as well as the alleys. So you would not be getting, so that entire space would essentially become a venue that could be used, not unlike what you see during the Christmas tree lighting. When we have the Christmas tree here and we close down G here and we close down H, or 5th at H. So those are kind of the 2 levels that staff has kind of thought of that could be brought forward. So I think with that, you want to come back up and take it from there, Dana?
Brad, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, Dana might be able to answer it also, but, so you just mentioned 2 tiers, but there are already 3 tiers. Because, like, for instance, Art Along the Road would be closing down the parking lot and Fifth and H, because it goes into H. In other words, H is not open during, so there's at least 3 tiers that I can think of right now. You're talking 2.
No, it's a good point. I mean, I think
I know it's a good point.
our thought on that was that you would really, in terms of the application that somebody would submit to the city for a special event, if they're wanting to use the Outlot Plaza, these would kind of be the 2 options that are spelled out very clearly in the application form that they would be able to choose from. It doesn't preclude somebody from saying, yeah, well, we also want to do another part of this event. We want to close down H. That, to my knowledge, really is a very unusual event and wouldn't be advertised in air quotes in the application. This is an option for you to use the plaza. I think in part because of the impacts that you're talking about are quite different between those options. So, but, certainly council can have that as part of your conversation. But that was our thinking.
Thank you. And I would also agree with Brad on that. We would view Art Along the Road as a separate type of event that requires a special events permit. These are just a few examples, and of course Art Along the Road is on there of events that could happen in the Owl Plaza. What we're really trying to look at is that footprint. The plaza has been designed to close down the street there between on Fifth, between H and G. So that's why we're looking at that as one of the footprints. But it also does make sense that you could just shut down the parking area as part of the plaza. So let's just keep looking at this. As far as policy development, that's what we're really working on here. We're trying to determine what are the rules around this plaza and how are we going to share those with the public and how can they use it. We did look at several different cities and evaluate their policies on this type of space. Some of the key factors that came out of that research was just to protect the public assets and investment. That's what a lot of the policy is focused on, making sure that the hardscaping, landscaping, and pavers are protected. And then also safe management of pedestrian flows. So of course, if there's people walking around, we want to make sure they're safe. The purpose of our particular plaza is really a hybrid of off-street parking and an outdoor gathering space right there in the heart of downtown that will support the community and economic vitality. So when we were looking at this, we were trying to determine, do we come up with a whole bunch of our own rules, or do we look at something that already exists? And we do right now have a special events policy as part of the municipal code. So we started there. A lot of the questions and concerns that people have are addressed in the special events policy. So we thought it pertinent to use that as our basis for guidelines. Just a few, this is basically an overview of what's in the special events application process. They must provide an application no less than 30 days prior to the event. That application informs all departments, so all departments are aware of what's happening and when the event is happening, and also the details of that event. The applicant needs to provide evidence that they have sufficient insurance. If there's alcoholic beverages going to be available, they must obtain the required permits. We can require notification to the adjoining property and business owners under this rule. And an applicant must demonstrate that they have adequate security, first aid, sanitation, and waste disposal facilities. That's always a concern, making sure they clean up after themselves. And in the current policy under special events permit, the right-of-way must be cleaned and returned to the pre-event condition within 24 hours. We're recommending and looking at maybe some supplemental restrictions that would be in addition to what has been laid out in the special events policy. Establishing and requiring a set fee makes sense to protect that space that's newly built or will be finished and newly built with nice pavers and shade sails and all those things. Also considering standards for surface protection, so not allowing people to use stakes to secure down their pop-up tents and those sorts of things. Grease mats for cooking or serving areas, so if someone is serving food in the area, it's protecting the pavers. And then also only non-residue adhesives. So when you're taping down cords for safety, different things like that, we want to make sure that the tape is easily removed. These are all standards that other cities also have. I'm going to point out that's kind of why they've landed in our proposal here. Operating regulations, making sure that there is emergency vehicle access, sound limits, amplified sound from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's in our current codes. We'll just stick with that. And then waste management, again, make sure that all event trash is hauled by the person that's creating it. So adding a new and improved public space that's available for the community to use and reserve is an increase in our existing municipal level of service. So any increases in level of service, they're required to go before council for review and approval. So the council may choose to limit or expand a new service in accordance with the associated expenses and revenues, taking budget impacts into consideration. So we're going to go ahead and look at some potential expenses and costs associated with the use of this space. First, we did look at the map of the Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 1 is, again, the parking lot itself. There is going to be a process for reviewing a special events application, 72 hours on-site posting so that to notice everyone that the lot will be closed, and then post-event cleanup and maintenance. Also considering a management of a deposit of sorts, we would recommend a deposit, and we'll look at those costs here in a minute, but a security deposit that would be refundable. That way, if there are damages, we can get a return on that. The Tier 2 impacts would include Tier 1, but also maybe extend the noticing period to 2 weeks. Also, because there will be the street closure, the alley and 5th Street, using those bollards, the installation of those and putting them in and taking them out, closing the street is an additional impact on the city. So as far as considering a fee schedule, there's a lot to consider, just ongoing impacts to various departments. Right now, we're working with the departments to get that feedback, but administration, streets, downtown and parks, as well as police and fire, will have some impacts from the use of this space or the closure of this space, or even depending on the size of the event when it comes to people being down there. We're also looking and recommending fees for kind of a variety of things to make it accessible. So a half day and a full day rate potentially. Again, the two different tiers, a smaller footprint versus a larger footprint. The refundable security deposit, there could be some time involved with staff too for a pre-event walkthrough on that. And then electricity, that's a new amenity that's being offered at the Owl Plaza. So considering maybe an electrical fee, a flat fee for that. Here's a table that kind of tries to give you a breakdown. It's a little bit challenging because there are so many variables, but just looking at our current Grants Pass Park facilities and some of those rates, as well as the other cities that we looked at, we are recommending some fees that are within that range and are what we would see to be comparable to the fees that we saw across the board here. So we've listed out for Tier 1, so that's just the closure of the parking lot for a half day, let's just say 4 hours, $160. We have there's only one other park facility that does a 4-hour rate, and it was at $160. You can see other cities do an hourly rate. I think there could be some challenges with the hourly rate because of the parking element, getting people to leave the parking lot or so that it's available is going to, I think, could be a challenge. So I think having a larger block of time is going to be a better way to go. And then we can look at tier 1 again, the parking lot as a full day. We're looking at a similar parks facility. The size was about $200 a day, which is right in the range of what other cities are charging. For the tier 2, so the larger footprint, we couldn't find another example that was a half-day rate for those, so we just, I guess, showed an example of a doubled rate for the size from the half-day rate that we showed for tier 1. And then for tier 2, full day, the $350 per day is really an average of what we saw in the range of the other cities. Something that was a comparable size space for GP Parks facilities was $500 a day. Refundable deposit right on the low range of what others are charging, and then a flat rate for electricity is right there, again at the low range of that. We did just a very rough estimate of staff time on what we thought it would take to close the street with the bollards and be there to do a pre-event walkthrough, assess damages, all of those things, and we're estimating around $230 between the staff time for that. You've also received some community feedback from the Owl Plaza. I know there were some letters, I think, written from the H Street restaurants. Main Street provided a letter, and then Chamber also provided some feedback. Some of the highlights, I guess, from H Street, they felt restricting food vendors and the total number of events permitted was valuable to them, and that they would request 3 weeks' notice because of the impact of their restaurants there. Main Street and Chamber, they had some similar feedback. Chamber really actually had a slightly different take, though, on restrictions. They wanted to, well, I'm just looking at it here really quick, just to not overregulate the space, leave it more accessible, have events more frequently, allow for weekend events, allow for First Fridays, that kind of thing. I believe these were all emailed to you directly, so hopefully you had a chance to take a peek at those. And as far as cost implications, the final cost is going to vary significantly and will be determined after we could get some direction from council on your desired level of service for this space. The expenses are really going to be an assessment of the department impacts, and the revenue source, if it's decided to rent the space, would be future rental and application fees. Those revenues, we would recommend go back to the downtown services budget for ongoing maintenance of the space. And that just leads me to the policy questions here. I'll leave it to you to, I guess, ask me questions, but the questions that we're putting to the council are, do you wish to set limits on the number of events that might occur in the Owl Plaza within the year? Given the anticipated impacts that we've looked at today, staff's recommending a maximum of 6 of the tier 1 events, so just closure of the parking lot. Does the council wish to limit the number of events that will cause a street closure? Again, the anticipated impacts, the staff would recommend a maximum of 4 events that would shut down the larger footprint tier 2. And then there's some more larger questions here too. Does the council support a full cost recovery for extraordinary expenses that accommodate the increased level of service? So that includes all staff time, materials, long-term maintenance, or does the council desire to subsidize the use of the plaza in order to reduce fees to private users? So a lot of questions. I'm available to answer some.
Thank you. Questions for council? Rick?
Thank you, Dana. Could you go back to slide 14? So when we look at impacts, I think a balance of the existing brick and mortar business, it's important to make sure that they're included in the overall picture and what impact it would have upon them, and to address how, I want to say we would soften the impact, but they would share in the activity that's there. And I'm not saying how we're going to do that, but I think that should be looked at so that we're not sacrificing one for the other, but they can both enjoy that. And I didn't know if you've explored that at all.
We saw that feedback from 8th Street restaurants. I think I don't have a perfect answer for that yet. I think it's something we could explore. I think there is a challenge with it being a public space that we would favor any individual. But I think we should be working with the folks that are most impacted to try and mitigate any issues that might cause their business.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
Dana, I'd like to know how much does staff anticipate for events closing off all the streets per year? We have the Chalk Fest, we have the street lighting, which doesn't need H Street closed off. I mean, what others are you anticipating, and would it be 4? Would there be
Well, you've named 2 of them right now, yes, the Art Along the Rogue and the tree lighting. We know Cruise the Rogue has an intention to close that footprint for the tier 2 footprint. So that's 3. That would really only leave one other event open for the public to bring forward at this point.
Further questions, Joel? Victoria?
Have you had interest yet in any, have people contacted to say, oh, when that's open, I want to do this? And if so, what are some of those things?
I would say yes, but I don't have a lot of details on that. Aside from the Cruise the Rogue, I've had 2 additional people reach out and say, when is the plaza opening? I want to know the process, but I basically told them, we're talking about it Monday. I'll give you more information later. But those folks didn't tell me exactly what they wanted to use it for, but they did have an interest in it.
Eric, you got any questions?
No.
Seth?
No.
Rob?
Yeah, I've got a few things, then I'm going to a comment to respond to what Rick's concerns were. But on slide 11, when it says must submit an application no less than 30 days before the scheduled event, what would staff turnaround be on reviewing an application?
That's a good question. Right now, they're reviewed in admin. I don't know if that's in the policy specifically. I can look that up and see if it's actually written in there.
So the reason I ask, regardless of what the answer is, there's the H Street Group and others actually have said that a bare minimum of 3 weeks' notice is needed for scheduling employees. And frankly, 3 weeks is not enough because people do sometimes schedule vacations and such far in advance. So when you say a minimum of 30 days, I could imagine that staff taking, depending on when that application came in, if it came in on a Thursday before a 3-day weekend, I could see staff taking, the better part of 10 days reviewing something. So then that leaves you with, like a week and a half's notice. So that doesn't work. So the 3-week, or rather the 30-day minimum submission time is not practical because I just don't see staff acting on it that quickly, especially if it was a slightly more complicated than average application or anything that needed discussion. So you would hope that everything's black and white, but it isn't always. So that part, so slide 11, I think needs, no matter where we go on the rest of it, needs to be adjusted. Also on the on slide 16, I'm not sure why a tier 2 full day for this location would be any different than, why would it be less expensive than any other Grants Pass Park facility? Because frankly, it's going to be more complicated than a park facility. One thing that comes to mind immediately is there's going to be times when vehicles will have to be towed. There's going to be people in that parking lot, sometimes people in that parking lot for days at a time because we have very, very poor parking enforcement. there could be people in that lot that are out of town, quite frankly. I know that for a fact, because I know where they live. And so we're going to end up with, again, due to the combination of poor parking enforcement and the fact that some people who actually live in the area will keep their cars there for days. There's going to be towing, there's going to be other issues. So I don't think that it should be any less expensive. And obviously, the person whose car gets towed generally has to pay. It's not the city, but I think it's going to be more complicated than a park shutdown. So I don't see why it should be any less expensive, because the city's going to incur more costs. There's no doubt.
Okay.
And had you considered the parking, the towing aspect at all? Because it's going to be pretty straightforward. There's going to be times when people are just going to have to get towed.
Yeah, we've thought about that. I think we expect that over time, people will start to understand how it's functioning, and hopefully people won't be parking there overnight or, like for longer periods of time, but that will definitely be a factor in the beginning.
Sure. So getting back to what Rick was saying about, one of the main concerns I think that the 8th Street Food and Beverage Group was concerned with is that they and I am part of they, want to feel as though rather than an afterthought, rather than an oops, we should do it differently next time, they're respected going in, and that things progress somewhat slowly here before they're as these concepts are proven. So, I know that, frankly, as a city staff person, or maybe other people, maybe other downtown groups, they might see a restaurant that's busy for an hour, they walk in, oh, that's great, or even a line for half an hour, that's great. Big success. But, that doesn't necessarily mean very much. If somebody has, if they're busy for an hour, they'll probably pay their employees for that day. They'll cover their payroll. But it doesn't cover anything for January, February, March when it's slow. So my point is just because it could appear as if these 8th Street businesses have a line, so as a result, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, we need food trucks. And that has been, in the past, that's been staff's reaction and other people who have run events there, oh, we need food trucks because the restaurants will have a line. Well, after, like I say, maybe the second hour, the second seating, people will cover their expenses. The restaurant owners might actually be able to pay themselves minimum wage through the slow months. It's only after there's been, we'll say, and this is true for any night on any restaurant, the third or fourth seating is what makes somebody really successful, and maybe they can develop enough cash reserve to expand like Bohemian did or move like Horny Goat did. But that doesn't happen just because there's a line for an hour. And someone looks at that and says, they got a line for an hour, we can bring food trucks in, it'll be a better event. That was probably the biggest single concern that the 8th Street businesses had, is who makes the decision and at what point is competition brought in? And I'd like to make the point, because I haven't heard it from really anybody, including the businesses on 8th Street, but the fact is if the restaurants and food and beverage on 8th Street fills up and there's a line and things are doing great for a couple of hours or more, organically, that crowd is going to begin to filter over to G Street. And then we've got, Perez is going to be helped, and Lulu's is going to be helped, and Bohemian's going to be helped, and Laughing Clam's going to be helped, and the whole area, the other end of 8th Street gets helped. Taqueria, et cetera, et cetera. But all that gets undermined if we bring food trucks in right away because a staff person thinks, oh my goodness, that place was busy for an hour. They had a line, we need food trucks. All the restaurant owners that I know of are completely against that concept of immediately bringing food trucks in as competition, which is what Rick's point was. And I heard from a staff person too at one of the discussions that they said, well, we didn't bring any food trucks in that directly competed with you. Well, guess what? People come to an event with one stomach. They don't come with multiple stomachs. They're gonna potentially eat probably one main meal, and they're not going to go to a lot of other places. So, and I think, I'm not sure if the example was a taco truck, but if a taco truck comes in and they sell 100 tacos, they have the biggest day of the year, that probably means that John Connor at the Hall, instead of selling 100 burgers that day, is going to sell 70. Or instead of selling 30 pizzas that day, he's going to sell 15. or the ramen guy, instead of selling 50 bowls of ramen, he's going to sell 30. So the fact is that the food truck issue is really, really important, and I think that if we had an event that, again, filled up 8th Street businesses and it spilled over to the surrounding neighborhood, that's really powerful. And I think that's why past council and this council was okay spending $1.7 million, because it could help the whole area. So, to me, food trucks are just completely, it's a completely different animal. And just very quickly, what differentiates a food truck from the brick and mortars? I can guarantee you that my business is not unique to half the businesses in town. But like just this year, okay, so I've donated to at least 3 local schools, individual athletes, marching bands, individual musicians, scholarships for seniors, Josephine County Food Bank, other targeted drives, and for that matter, I know Clint will be happy to hear that I've also, in the past, actually, my question is that has this been, because it actually was written here, but there was no response to the concept of outside vendors. They were asking us actually what we thought of outside vendors, and that's the answer that I was giving. So outside vendor considerations are very important, and that has to be worked out. And I'm not sure if staff is even the right person to work that out, but how would you envision working that out? It's listed here, but there's no solution.
I think it's a good question, and it is a policy question. It's whether or not we want to allow food trucks in this space. You have the option to do that or not. You could, it's inherently limited to some extent by the power access that's available. There's 150 amps available. That would be a maximum of 3 food trucks if that's something that some event wanted to do. You could also restrict the use of what do you use instead of power? Generators. You could, so you get to decide that. You can tell us that feedback and let us know what you think should be done.
So to that point, if you're talking about the electrical supply there, then you're automatically assuming that the outside vendor would get the absolute prime location. Okay, and that also is against what the 8th Street businesses want. Now, the food trucks, as you probably know, do have generators. So there's a lot of things to consider. If you're going to say that they're going to use the power there, they're getting the absolute prime location that usurps everybody else getting first chance at the customers. So I don't know if you've thought that through, but there's a lot there to consider. It's
no, it's a lot to consider. I agree, and it's something that you can decide ultimately.
Yeah, as I understand what we're doing here is that you guys are presenting us with a starting of a model of a process to actually put special events in this area. It is incumbent on council to decide whether they want to go full-heartedly with what you presented so far, modify it, amend it, or add to it. So that's where we are at this moment in time. So we are at a 2-hour mark, and I appreciate you guys having your banter, and I don't want to pick on you, Rob, but you just spent 15 minutes basically saying that food trucks are bad. I think it could have been summed up a little bit quicker. At this moment, we're at a 2-hour mark. We have set a 2-hour mark for our workshop, so we will need a motion to go forward, and then I'm going to actually exit the building because I have a previous engagement, and I'm going to hand the reins over to the president of the council. So, Victoria.
So there were a lot of questions from business owners
So I'm looking for a motion to go forward.
I'm getting to that, Mayor. There were a lot of questions on emails, and people are very concerned about food trucks as well as other things.
No, I'm looking for a motion to extend the
getting to
workshop
that.
for 2 hours. I
Okay,
don't need
motion.
banter about the topic. I'm either going to cut this workshop off right this second, or you guys are going to give me a motion to go forward.
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. And I got a
And then-
second from Rick. Thank you. All opposed, say nay. All in favor to go forward, yay. All right, thank you very much. At this moment in time, I do apologize. I'm going to step out. I'm going to hand the reins over to the president of the council, and thank you very much, and hopefully you guys will be a little bit more efficient here.
Councillor Pell, Andrea has a question.
No, I wasn't finished with mine either.
Victoria, what do you got going?
So there was there are many concerns from business owners. And in looking through all of this, I was thinking about and what staff has put forward here, some really great concerns. But I just am not sure that we're ready to make the policy right now until we know what it's going to look like. So I was thinking that we might want, and that's why I asked earlier, have people already asked? One of the things that I thought was interesting that people came up with was if food trucks were going to be there ever, they need to be anchored to an already existing business. I thought maybe that was an interesting idea, but I don't know. I mean, we would need to discuss it more and look into it. But my thinking was that we need to have some pilot programs before we even get to the policy. And all of these policy questions are super important. But I think that the area businesses especially kind of need to know what this is going to look like first, and so do we. So I wonder if we might propose to have some pilot programs with people who are already interested in doing it, with some clear rules in place to begin with, before we finalize what the permanent rules for the owl lot are going to be. And so Dana, you said the first one who was interested was
Cruise the Rogue is probably going to be
Cruise the Rogue.
very
Okay.
first event that would want to use the space.
Okay, and I don't know if they would be I don't know if they want food trucks or not, but maybe Cruise the Rogue, and then maybe one or two other people. I mean, people are probably going to flood with interest in it. So I don't know if council would be interested in pursuing some sort of a pilot program before we finalize all of the policies. Would be a good idea, because, and my idea in that those pilot programs should include something where the business owners, especially ones on Fifth, and I know that there was one on, at least one on H, there are more I know, with input from, maybe they should get first crack at it, I don't know, if they have an event that they think would be great to bring people back to that area. So that's just something that I wanted to, rather than go ahead and go through all of the aspects of the policy right now, let's do a few things and then see how things go, and then come back and look at the policy.
Indra, did you have something?
Yes. I think we're building the general policy so we can go forward. We can't go forward even with a pilot without some sort of policy in place, is my guess. But I had a question on, so the notifying businesses, 2 weeks, and mailings, I would propose, mailing are so inefficient. Like, it seems to me the city would want to have a direct contact, either text or email, with a contact from each business that's affected, so it can be, one, cost effective and much more efficient in getting them, alerting them to closures. Is that possible?
Yes, I think that, oh, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe Karen has more to add. I think we could potentially, create that list. You know, we have, you always have the challenge of those phone numbers changing and businesses changing owners and all that. But I hear what you're saying, Counselor. I mean, it makes good sense. The typical notice in the past has been the mailing, but in such a small area, it's more timely and it's more efficient, and we could put it, I guess, make it optional. I mean, we don't rather require somebody to give us a phone number.
Right. Well, almost all businesses and organizations you interact with these days are text or email. So I would think one of those two, especially if it's an alert from the city to closing the street or having an event, would be good. So that's a recommendation. Secondly, the cost, the fees. So on that chart, it seems like we would want I was just looking at a full day is hardly any more than a half day. And our full day is up at the high end of other cities. I mean, our half day is at the high end, $40 an hour of other cities, but our full day is at the low end. So I would propose increasing that full day to maybe double what the half day is, and then go from there. And then thirdly, I would say no food trucks. There is a big concern, and I agree with all that Rob said, and Victoria mentioned the letters as well. I think starting out, we don't do food trucks because the goal is to increase business, economic growth downtown. And food trucks have very, very little overhead. And so why would any business want to come into downtown and pay a fee to have a brick and mortar building if they could just, line up their food trucks for events and make money? So I think it's a real detriment to businesses and growth downtown. Now, it might, if there are events and no food trucks and we need more eating places, that might entice a new restaurant to come downtown. So I look at it as more of an incentive to bring business downtown if we don't have food trucks. So those are just my thoughts. I think everything else, looks good. Thank you.
Joel?
Just real quick, Dana, do food trucks buy a city business license?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to, add a comment too. We've got at least 3 restaurants downtown right now that were restaurants that are empty. So, do we want to promote more empty businesses, or do we want to promote, food trucks making a great living on a few events? I'm not a big fan of the food trucks for a lot of reasons. I mean, if one of the business owners on H Street, suggested, like on, for instance, Art Along the Road, when you have all of H Street closed from 4th to 6th, if a food truck has prime location there near the intersection of 5th and H, they're closer and easier to get to than any of the businesses on G Street. So there's going to be, again, less organic spillover to the businesses on G Street, which is really what I think we should all be wanting, is for all of our businesses to be absolutely jamming. And as far as, a pilot program, in some ways, we have years of experience with Art Along the Road as a pilot program for the largest events. We've seen that for years. As far as for the smallest ones, the businesses on H Street were pretty adamant that they wanted things to basically be done carefully, and in year 2 or 3 or 4, we could be adding more food trucks or adding things once it's clear that these events are not taking away anything from, the G&H businesses, because not all events are good for all businesses. There is no doubt that not all events are good for all businesses. For instance, last year, finally, the city did a great job on the Christmas tree breakdown. In years past, we had a great event, the Christmas tree lighting, and then it was sometimes 2 weeks before the tree came down and driving and parking was back to normal. That's just completely unacceptable. The turnaround is really critical, and that, in a sense, we'd like to see that happen really quickly a bunch of times. But food trucks are not at all popular with the downtown restaurants at all. If there were going to be food trucks, to me, they should not be getting prime location right in the middle of an event where it really, really is going to, for sure, take away business from the local brick and mortars. And again, the local brick and mortars are paying our taxes, they're paying our safety levy, they're paying our safety fee 12 months out of the year. And that includes when it's slow. So they need to be really respected. And so, when I saw that, you'd made accommodations for having, mats down for grease in case there's cooking, like, the city is looking at protecting their asset, but not necessarily looking at protecting, the business owner's asset. Because if you're going to allow cooking in a place like that, well, then you're disrespecting the business owners. So it's interesting that the details went one way, but not really fully thought out in the other direction.
The city is not disrespecting brick and mortar companies. This was an option that's been put out there. It's common throughout the state of Oregon and the nation for this, and I'm just concerned about the staff being portrayed as being against brick and mortars with food trucks.
I would say, Aaron, that it could be inadvertent, and I will say that it could be inadvertent, and it may not be intentional, but the fact is that the policies that went in place before that were completely done by staff without input to the local businesses were, in many cases, anti-business downtown. And I can name them if you want me to. So it wasn't intentional, but the fact is the details you were looking at were more about from your perspective than from the outside perspective. Oh, I'm sorry. Kathleen.
Thank you. So Dina, I know we heard from several business owners that they didn't get quite, I don't know if they didn't get notice ahead of time with the Owl Plaza. Could you just tell me how much notice did they get before the project started? Just to clarify for the public, since we did get emails about that.
Yeah, we sent out a mailing actually in early December, before the selection of the contractor, to notify them of the contractor selection, the intent to proceed date, and the anticipated start date. And the anticipated finish date too, I guess.
So I'm wondering if Indra's suggestion would be better to contact these people by email or text, just to make sure that they got it, or with a response, because the mail, as we know, is not always very efficient. Just wondering if that might be something to consider.
Yeah, it sounds like Brad has something to
Oh,
add.
I just wanted to add that we also did go door to door. And there was a sheet that was handed door to door as well.
God. Okay, Indra, I just wanted to respond to, and I'll be with you in a moment. So this gets back to what Brad just said, and it gets back to all of these comments. First off, the door-to-door sheet was basically after the fact, Brad. You know, it was a good month or 2 months after the initial attempt was, where 70% of them came back undeliverable, whatever. But it gets back to, I think, the point that Indra was making earlier, and that Kathleen was just touching on, and what Brad said, this is a very small area. And when we go back to when James was working here, it got to the point where James was actually going door to door, and he actually was making contact with the business owners. I could see adding to the cost of this, or at least for staff to include in consideration of the cost, of someone going door to door as part of the notification process, because it's such a small area. I mean, a staff person could do that in half a day, and you add that to the cost of the event fee. Because when James was doing it, it was more effective than just relying on mail, and email would help for sure. But to me, there's no reason not to also have a door-to-door personal contact with that, with any questions in real time, rather than that to me should be included also. And Indra, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I had a question on the 24-hour cleanup. So is that 24 hours after at close of event? And does that include they would have 24 hours if they did pop-ups or something on 8th Street, that 8th or 5th Street would be closed for 24 more hours after? Where does that 24 hours take effect?
That's a good question. It's what's currently in the special events policy. So it is saying that it must be, and this is, but special events are anywhere in the city if someone applies to close down a street. So that's what that policy says. We don't have to stick to that. We can have further restriction on Owl Plaza that says it has to be returned to its condition within whatever period of time. But that's where the 24 hours comes from. It's in our current policy for special events.
Okay, I would look to have that sooner, because if an event's on Friday night and ends at 10 or 11, they have until all day Saturday to keep that parking lot closed, which is a heavy business day for businesses that might want cars parking. So I think that needs to be tightened up quite a bit so that the downtown is put back with parking and streets for business the next day or later that evening. my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to that also is, I mean, years ago, during Art Along the Rogue, they closed down the intersection of H and 5th all day on Friday to put up staging for music. And I talked to the staging company, and they said they could do it in 4 hours, and they could have done it from 5 o'clock on. It didn't have to be closed during the day at all. It could have been done in the evening, which gets back to also some of what the Chamber of Commerce was saying about fully respecting the, we'll say, 9 to 5 business requirements for parking and driving and things like that. So they're saying that they were saying basically the same thing that Indra's saying, which is the same thing that I'm saying, is that we need to find a way to codify or word this so it's done in the absolute minimum amount of time, not the maximum amount of time. I mean, 24 hours is, sure, that's a piece of cake, but, and for a neighborhood block party, it might not be a big deal. But as far as getting back to business, you know, if Art Along the Rogue ends at Sunday at 4 o'clock, they'd have until Monday at 4 o'clock to get all the parking back in shape, and it's just way longer than it has to be. So to me, this needs to be as tight as possible. The analogy that I gave to a debrief to Art Along the Rogue last year is it needs to be more like an Indy pit stop than taking your car to a dealership and leaving it overnight to have the snow tires changed. I mean, there has to be a priority that this needs to be as fast as possible. And, you know, 24 hours is clearly not as fast as possible. If 12 hours is doable in virtually every case, then it should be 12. But it's, yeah, I agree with Indra. 24 is way longer than it needs to be. Victoria.
So I just want to go back to what I'm not implicating staff or businesses or anyone with this, so I want to preface that. But because of the emails that we have gotten, and just by the nature of 5th Street, G Street, H Street being closed down, I think there's just some trepidation, and there are a lot of downtown business owners who are just wondering, what is this thing going to be like? And I think it's going to be great, you know, but I just don't know as though the downtown business owners, I think they need time to acclimate to what this new space is going to be for them, and then they might have some input then that would be really valuable to put into our application process and use restrictions for the Owl Plaza. And so that's why I was suggesting that we do a few events where people were they already want it. And we already do have special event processes, and then it would be okay if we, in the case of the Owl Plaza, for these few pilot programs to say, yes, it can't be 24 hours, it has to be 12 or something like that. But I think easing into it with a lot of downtown business input after watching it be used would be the better way to go, because then everybody's just gonna feel just like, shoo, feel a lot better about it. So anyway, so just going back to the idea of maybe we want to do a few special events before we tack down all of the rules, and have those, once again, if we can, and if there's interest in the businesses downtown, to have those few pilot programs directed directly towards downtown business. So those were my thoughts. I just don't feel like I would know exactly, although there were some great ideas that we've talked about, I don't know as though I would be ready to vote on any of them, because I think we have to see it in process first.
Okay, so to me, and I think that there was some things that are pretty easy to zero in as far as needing adjustment. One would be on slide 11 with regards to must submit no less than 30 days before, since staff didn't even really know how long the turnaround was going to be. And again, my point is, if someone on a Thursday afternoon on a holiday weekend brings it in, you know, we've got to know that the businesses are going to get at least 30 days notice. Not that staff has 30 days or that the city, but after it's been approved, the businesses should have a month. So that 30-day, to me, if staff needs X amount of time, it should probably be 45 days. And that would hopefully guarantee that businesses will get a month's notice that something's happening so that they can schedule accordingly. Because a lot of restaurants need to schedule, they got to schedule heavy for some events. And you can't just snap your fingers and get some of your best people in a couple of weeks. So for that reason, that's the reason that restaurants need more than 30 days. So again, that first part on the second bullet, or the first bullet, needs to be no less than 30 days, should probably be 45 days. The last bullet, I believe, if we want to call it a pilot program, I believe the pilot program should be 12 hours, not 24 hours, and see how that works. As far as the food trucks go, I'm not in favor of food trucks at all, and I'd like to see if the businesses feel that they can handle whatever the event gives them. And it may be that, we'll find out that businesses are doing okay or businesses are doing really good, and we might find out that G Street businesses do really well too with no food trucks at events. But at least the first two for sure, I think we can easily change to give staff a framework to move forward, because this thing is moving forward, whether or not council acts on it, it's going to move forward. So those are two things, 45 days and 12 hours. And I would also, I would limit any food trucks and pop-ups to the businesses that are there in the immediate effective area. Those are three recommendations I would make to be able to move forward today. Joel.
To expedite things, I was going to make a motion, and then under discussion, if there's any changes or amendments to the motion, I would be open to that. Anybody object to that? Okay.
Seth was going to say something. Did you want to say something first, Seth?
Yeah, are we in discussion or are we in?
We're in discussion.
Okay.
Deep into discussion.
Well, I'd also have a question, Rob, if you think that this is a conflict of interest on your part, since you do own a business that.
It's a great question. I think I'm part of a much larger class of people. It's not my specific business.
I mean, I just did a quick research,
Yeah.
and I mean.
And what'd you come up with?
It's pretty much an actual conflict of interest, potentially a potential conflict, but I'm just saying.
Again, I'm part of a much larger class of businesses that basically covers the CBD, so I
you tell me all the
interpret that
time,
differently.
so I'm just making sure
Thank you.
that the record's straight. That's all.
Does Stephanie have an opinion on that?
I think that's an ethical question that you have to assess for yourself, whether or not there's an actual conflict of interest and whether you could benefit or your business could benefit from a decision that's made on this.
I don't think I would benefit any more than other people in a multiple block area, which makes me part of a larger class. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, Joel.
So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and if people want to make amendments, have at it. I make a motion to accept the policy as presented with the following changes. That the city requires a 45-day notice, and that they notify then the landowners and businesses in the local area by combination of text, email, perhaps hard copy mail, and door-to-door. That the full scheduled Tier 2 full day fees are $500 a day. The Tier 1 is $350 a day. That there would be no food trucks. And that after 6 months, we review this as a pilot program and see if it's working or if we need to make changes. The other change I would have is have a 12-hour cleanup, and that we minimize the setup time where reasonable. That's my motion.
Victoria.
I'm just asking about your motion.
Sure.
You say we're going to review all of these things in 6 months, you said?
After implementation, we'll review it in 6 months. That came from the pilot program idea.
Did you want to add that in that 6 months, we're only going to have a specific number of programs? Or did you want to just let the floodgates open?
I would hesitate to let the restrictions on the amount of economic activity within those 6 months just because of a pilot program. And if there's a need to review it sooner, I think we as a council could change that.
There were, oh, but you still are limiting the number of events, correct? Because that was a part of
Yeah, there was no proposal to change that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Rick?
So Joel, if one of the downtown businesses that's a brick and mortar happened to have a food truck and they wanted to put it out there, then your motion would prohibit it.
My understanding is if we have a separate policy for sidewalk and restaurants, that they can do anytime. So for example, the Laughing Clam has...
We have sidewalk permits for those businesses,
Yeah, so they can
correct?
do that at any time, and that's independent of a special event.
And that sidewalk could include their own food truck.
No, Counselor. We're just talking about sidewalk slash cafe type of events that are permits that are just allowed outside of their place of business. If you're wanting to have a discussion about brick and mortar and having them with the only exemption, then I'd also need to define what boundaries and areas of your brick and mortar area you'd be looking at that would allow that. So.
Okay, thank you. I think, all right.
I may be talking too much, but I would argue against excessive regulation going in and seeing what the pilot program comes up with, and then if we need to make adjustments from there, but not to go in with a whole lot of regulations.
So just to clarify your motion, were you wanting to, because you mentioned leaving it open to provide an opportunity for the market to drive how many events, but we did have here listed some maximums for the year. So I just wanted to clarify, did you want to remove those maximums, or did you want to have those maximums for the pilot project for the 6 months?
Any item that was, my intent was, we could change, but my intent was any item that the motion remained silent on would be as proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Indra has a question.
Indra, go ahead. Indra?
Sorry. Yeah, I agree with that motion, and I agree with all the points. And I guess my last question would be, if we needed to review it sooner than 6 months, so if issues arose right away, I mean, we certainly could do that, correct, Aaron?
Yes, that is correct. You do that anytime, and just for a point of order, we need a second on that motion before we continue to discuss.
I'll second it.
Did someone else want to talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, I'd feel much more comfortable moving this to a further workshop where the mayor can run the meeting. But I will say, I don't agree with some of the things in that motion. I do not agree that we should disallow food trucks entirely. I don't think that we should allow them at every single event. And, you know, we can decide what that looks like. You know, even if we only start with a few. I just think that that would be, doing a disservice. And I think too, if we're going to do that, we should hear from the public. Public comment, bring people in from the community. I know we have obviously heard from downtown business and restaurant owners, but I think we should hear from other people outside of that. I don't necessarily agree with the cap on a maximum of 6 for tier 1 events and 4 for tier 2. You know, it's a tricky, we'd have to discuss that more as well, but I think we should not cap it that low. I mean, for instance, you know, even if we wanted to use it for First Fridays, I mean, I could see 8 to 9 First Fridays, you know, when the weather's nice, we have it on a Friday night. So that automatically covers 6 of those, hypothetically speaking, right now. You know, I understand if there's multi-day events, that could also come into play. Let's see. Yeah, I'm okay with the 45-day notice. I think that's fine. But again, I think there's a lot that we have to discuss here. I frankly don't feel comfortable discussing it with the current setup we have right now. Unfortunately, Clint had to leave. And yeah.
So Seth, on the one where, First Friday, how would you change that?
Well, I mean, and that's where, I mean, that would be a tier 1 event, correct? We would be shutting down the 5th Street.
Right. How would you change the fee schedule on that?
I'm not talking about the fee schedule. I'm just talking about the number of allowable. Was that included in your motion? I don't know.
I included the
Fees.
price discussion that was mentioned, but
Yeah.
but First Friday was not mentioned for multiple multiple days events were not discussed until you brought it up.
Well,
So how would you change that?
I'm mostly talking about the staff recommending a maximum of 6 tier 1 events per year. I'm not talking about fees right now.
Oh, so you're not talking about fees, you're talking about the number?
Yeah, I'm just talking about the number of events per
Okay.
year.
So, I'm just brainstorming with you. First Friday, could we consider all of those one event?
I think from an applicant perspective, it's different than what the concern was here, brought up here, was just looking at
Right.
the impact. Where does council want to go? Do they want to limit events in general in the number per year? And Councilor Benham brings up a good point too. If we were to use just 4 of the tier 2, we already have 3 of them basically covered in
Sure.
the first. So it's really a policy decision. And if you do a pilot project, it's up to you on if you want to do, because it sounds like we're doing a pilot project for the first 6 months. And do you want to limit in the first 6 months? Do you want to have these, because in essence, these numbers would be the first 6 months.
So to expedite discussion, I would amend my motion to say that an event that's repeated within a certain time period is counted as one event under our policy. Change it. I'm just throwing it out there. We just need to get something that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So Seth, are you saying that people might want to host one-day events on a First Friday, and that's why we would need more than 6? First Friday in itself is not, it's a free event. It's just that everybody's
Well, yeah,
open,
but like, for instance, if Main Street were to
Right.
reserve it and,
Right.
whether somebody else comes in. Yeah, I'm just saying.
There's a reason why we need more.
Yeah, but then I understand, if we have too many, you don't want, 5 back-to-back days of the parking lot closed. So it's more nuanced than just saying, all right, add more. We'd have to think about it, for sure.
Well, what's the number?
Rick?
You want to increase it to 9? Rick, go ahead.
I don't know if it's necessary to change the motion because we, the council, have the ability to bring this back to us if we've reached that limit and to extend it and modify it. We don't have to wait 6 months. It could be 2 months from now, it's before us again because we've maxed out. So does that make the motion still valid?
That'll work.
Indra has a comment.
Indra, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I was just going to say, we're making suggestions. Staff is going to go back and write the policy and application process, and then it's going to come to us at council before a vote where we will have a chance to have public input. So I don't see that as a problem. And I hate to just prolong this to another workshop. I really think we can make a decision and move forward so it's done quickly this week. Thank you.
Just from a standpoint of recognizing where we are with the numbers, and I think further discussion might be good, and to get direction today would be great, but if we take a look at the tier 2 events, which is the closure of both the parking lot and Fifth Street there, for a 6-month pilot project, if we did have it limited to 4, we'd only have 1 event, in essence, that we don't know of that would be able to do that in 6 months. So it is very limiting, because we would have, starting in June, we would have Cruise the Rogue that's interested. We'd have Art Along the Rogue, and that's in October. We'd have Christmas in December. So that's 3 within a 6-month period. And so that provides you with an opportunity of, do you want to take a look at those restrictions, broaden them, remove them for the pilot project?
Well, then we could change the wording to say it's restricted to that, and any additional ones beyond that within the time frame will come before council for exceptions. Or if you think that's too regulated, you can say at the discretion of staff. But that would be a threshold for monitoring and making a decision.
Yeah, if we're going to go to council with these applications, I think we need to look out even further than 45 days in order to meet the timeframes associated with some of the meetings, et cetera.
Sure. I agree with that.
Yeah, Victoria.
So I want to get this going as quickly as possible because I think the events will be great for business downtown. But I just also don't feel like we see the full picture yet, and that's why I really appreciated the pilot program that you put in your motion. But I don't feel like I'm prepared to vote on the no food truck just yet because we have heard from the public in both instances, well, I guess 3 instances, there are people that want them, there are people that absolutely don't, and then there are people who want to limit it to people who already have anchor businesses in the area. So I'm just not ready for that particular, take that off the table right now. So I don't think I would be ready to vote on this right now, but I also feel badly about that because I want this to get going as a pilot program. So I don't know what other counselors think about that, but I just wanted to add that.
Seth.
Yeah, Joel, I mean, I would like if you'd reconsidered the complete ban on food trucks. Again, I don't think we should allow them for every single event, and we can put parameters on what that looks like, even if it's, a certain amount of, maybe tier 2 events. We could offer spots to local vendors downtown first, as kind of a first right of refusal. I don't know. I just think for this, if we're doing a 6-month test period, there's some large events coming up, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's based off of estimated size. I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a little bit subjective, but again, I don't think we should ban them completely. I don't think we should say that anyone in any event can have them. So yeah.
So another option, Seth, is to say ban generators because electricity will only support 2 food trucks.
What do you?
Ban generators.
I think truly if you're trying to limit, you should limit the amount and not the use of generators as the ban.
Yeah, so in light of that spirit, it would be limit food trucks to 2 per event.
Yeah, I mean, if. Yeah.
Indra has a comment.
Did she say Indra is on the phone? Indra, go ahead.
Yes, back to the food trucks. I mean, I don't know, like, you're getting into a whole complicated area because if you limit to 2, which 2 are you going to allow? Who's going to pick them? What kind of food are they going to be? I have a food truck. Does ice cream count? Like, I could bring ice cream. For sure, ice cream would take away from buying gelato at the House of Glory. It does compete. And then my other point on if a brick and mortar has a food truck, I also think that gives a little bit of a disadvantage to the brick and mortars that don't have one, that some just happen to, so they're going to put theirs out there and they'll get more business for sure. So I would, and then, okay, so that's why I think we start with none, and then we can see, we can add them as we go, but we need a clear policy on how we're going to do that and who's going to choose them and what they're going to be. And does the person doing the event choose them so they have their food truck? So I could have Edder's event and have my own food truck. You know, it's just very complicated, and that to me doesn't really help the downtown food and beverage industry. And then maybe with the 6-month pilot, because the events are a question, maybe we could have 6 events in 6 months. So like 1 event a month and try it that way. So it's not inundated with 12 events, but it's more than 4. That's just an idea. Thank you.
So I'm not sure where we stand on any motions or adjustments or amendments.
Okay, so if my understanding of the Robert's Rules of Orders, I need to see if I'm willing to amend my original amendment.
Yeah, the current amendment on the dais right now is what's presented with the following changes: 45 days in advance notice, 12 hours instead of 24 to return to pre-event coordination. And I've got here no food trucks for 6 months, then reassess, and full day at $500.
You know, at this point in time, and with all due respect to what Seth says, because there's an element of truth in it, I would start the first 6 months with no food trucks and see how it works. And we're going to need a policy that's going to be not over-regulated, but a little more well thought out than just the spur of the moment at this time on food trucks. So I would not change the motion on food trucks at this point in time. I don't know if the second agrees with that.
Joel, I would agree with that. Would you do a friendly amendment to increase up to 6 events, the limit, instead of, I think it's up, is it at 4?
Tier two is at 4 right now, Counselor.
Yeah,
So
I would happily do it and increase it to 6 Tier 2 events.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I support that. Thank you.
So, Seth? Yeah.
So Joel, what metrics are we using for the next 6 months if we're not going to have food trucks? I mean, in 6 months from now, what are we going to come back and say we learned with not having them? I'm just curious.
So what I would anticipate is we go forth with this proposed policy. We, if there's going to be some unexpected bumps along the way, and it might be the restaurants can't handle the food and we need some food trucks. It might be that some food trucks offer a variety that people want, in which case we'd have a little more time to look at the policy and how we do it. In terms of the number of events, we'll see how many applications we get and see if we want to change it at that point in time. But I think, you know, this I call it adaptive management, where you go forth with at this point in time what seems fairly reasonable. It doesn't answer all the questions, and then as we move forward in 6 months, we adapt or change as we see fit.
Victoria?
So Cruise the Rogue is the one event we know would like to do this. So does anybody know, are they thinking about using a food truck? What, Cruise the Rogue, were they wondering about using a food truck?
I can answer it, but we also have Mike here. They are not, right now they're looking to use the street to do a large table event, and they are going to use downtown restaurants for that.
Thank you.
Any other comment before we take this to a vote? Did we have a second to Joel's motion?
Yes, Ender was the second
Okay,
to
Ender's
Joel's
second.
motion.
Okay, Joel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Victoria?
Yes?
Eric?
Yes.
Seth?
No.
I abstain. Rick?
Yes.
Yes.
Kathleen? And Indra?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the motion passed, what?
6 to 1.
6 to 2? 6 to 1?
6 to 1.
Thank you. Huh. Okay. Okay. Okay, so next item is procedures for conduct of business, and Aaron is going to lead us, get us started.
I have a very brief presentation. As my understanding is, we had 2 questions in front of council that you just wanted to provide additional clarification on and have a discussion. And that is really when it comes to public comment and the public comment cards, and then how many minutes we provide for public comment. Currently, right now, the blue cards can be submitted up to the start of the city council meeting, which is 6 o'clock. People have the ability to call in, email, and do that in advance, and then also to show up by 6 o'clock and do so. Council showed a desire to have a discussion about the potential of changing that. And currently, right now, we have the opportunity for people to take up to 2 minutes to provide public comment with a 30-minute stop for the total public comment portion of your business meeting. That concludes my presentation. Open it up for any questions.
Will you go back to the slide and, yeah, thank you.
Indra has a question.
Kathleen's got a question first. Thank you.
So maybe this is a question for Karen. How complicated is it to receive those cards up until public comment time? Is that chaotic? Does that not run smoothly? Or would there be a reason to cut it off at 6?
It depends. It depends on what topic is, how many people are in the audience. And then if we're limiting it to only 30 minutes, then to determine how many, we're going to adjust the amount of time they can speak. So sometimes it's crazy and sometimes it's not.
So obviously the last ones might not get to comment because of the 30 minutes,
No.
but that would have to be known ahead of time, that if you submit it late, then you might not get. So that's a way of, yeah.
Right.
The 30
Or we adjust the time from 3 minutes to 2 minutes or from 2 minutes to 1 minute that they could speak to make it into that 30-minute slot.
Yeah, typically in the past, that's the way we had always thought about it, is that if 30 people gave cards in, then they'd all only get a minute. So to me, the worst case that could happen is if a ton of cards come in right before public comment, then she's counting, or council president or the mayor's counting the number of cards, and we have to readjust. So we might be delayed a minute or 2 while we count the cards and adjust the number of minutes. That's how I look at it. That's a worst case situation. Right, I mean, that's right. Worst case is at the end, you'd count the cards and divide the minutes, right? Or I would, or Clint would.
And then the other thing is we do currently have a practice of people can email me by 3 o'clock on the day of the meeting to sign up for public comment, and I'll just write a blue card out for them so they don't have to be here right at 6.
Okay. Okay, any other comments? Comments, questions from anybody?
Indra.
Indra?
So Karen, you just said you will take them up to 3, but in this it says to 5 p.m. So should that be 3? Submitted business hours, the very first sentence?
Well,
that's that they can be submitted during normal business hours if they want to submit something in advance.
But yeah, if they want to come in and fill out a blue card, they can do it till 5. But if they submit it online, I'd like it by 3. That way, in case I miss my email, that way I can be sure they don't email me later.
Okay, so I'm trying to read this. So this call to action gives people 3 minutes to speak, and they can submit cards up to public comment time. Is that right?
Well, Counselor, the discussion is really twofold. One,
And I think we should break it down and maybe solve one at a time, potentially. The question is, do you believe the public needs 3 minutes versus 2 minutes, and what would you like to have during your public comment time? Do you want to provide them with 2 minutes or 3 minutes? Then, do you want to provide them the opportunity to provide blue comment cards up to public comment and/or leave it the way it is before the meeting? And that's the two questions. So really, do you want to extend it to 3 minutes, and then do you want to extend it to up to the meeting, up to the public comment during the meeting?
So this potential change.
We're not recommending any potential changes. This is for council discussion. Council has mentioned keeping it 2 minutes. Council's mentioned moving it to 3 minutes. And council's also mentioned moving the public comment opportunity period. Their staff has no recommendations on either one of these items.
Okay, but in this public comment potential change, it says comment cards will be received up until the public comment section of the meeting, and indeed that individuals will be given 3 minutes. So if we propose to accept this potential change, it affects both of those things.
It all depends on your motion and how you frame the motion.
Okay, thank you.
So, Andrew, I was planning on asking two separate questions when we asked for the motion. Victoria, did you have your hand up? Victoria.
Well, I don't want to stop anybody's discussion, but I think it's a good idea to extend public comment back to 3 minutes because the public wants that. So I would like to propose to extend public comment to 3 minutes and to allow for blue cards to be turned in by email up until 3 p.m. on Friday. I think that's what Karen said. And or up until 5 p.m. if they come in person. And I would also leave it open to someone to suggest that we extend public comment time total to, I don't know, I'm not making this part of my motion, but I think it logically, if you have more people talking, you might need more than 30 minutes, but I'm just making those two proposals right now.
Could you, if you want to make a motion, could you divide it into two things and we can?
Yeah, that was my motion.
Both things. Okay, do we have a second? Rick, second. Any discussion? Kathleen.
So I was wondering if we need to modify, in case there are so many cards that we need to reduce the amount of minutes that people can speak. Would you be willing to make a friendly amendment to that?
That's currently how our process is right now. I don't think amendment would need to be required, but if we have the current practice and rule is 30 minutes for public comment. This is part of your business meeting.
And the public understands that?
And then we modify, the chair or the mayor modifies based on the participation.
Okay, as long as the public understands that that's what we're doing. I haven't seen that happen yet, that we needed to modify.
Victoria.
Well, I was actually thinking about it in the opposite. I was thinking about it from the public's point of view. If there is a topic where you have more than 10 people who want to speak for 3 minutes, then you're going to need more than 30 minutes of public comment. So I didn't want to add that as part of the motion, so it isn't. But there could be time when public comment needed to be extended. And I don't know if there are other counselors who wanted to add that to, and I would accept it as a part of a friendly amendment if people wanted that.
Kathleen, you're shaking your head. What does that mean? Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. So you wanted to add a third piece as the friendly amendment? Okay, and the third piece is that public comment could go infinitely long. It could be infinitely long. There's no limit.
No, that the public would understand that the minutes would be reduced if there were that many cards.
Well, that's the exact opposite of what I think I heard Victoria say.
That's it, yeah. I was saying it should be extended. But if you didn't make the motion, you didn't make the motion.
So was there a second to that? Eric, you're seconding that. Oh, question.
So, Aaron, you said that was already policy, so does it even need to be included in the motion?
Currently, right now, the hard line from the policy is you have a business meeting that's made for you to do business. During that business meeting, you provide an opportunity for public comment. You have a rule that states you will provide 30 minutes for public comment during your business meeting. And so if you have, 3 minutes per person, then you have a general 10-person limit. 2 minutes, you have 15 people that can comment without modifying the known expectation. If you have 30 people, the rule is right now is you monitor and you change by providing everyone 1 minute to provide public comment within that 30-minute period. A lot of times, if you're going to have 50 people showing up, it's likely something bigger than just a public comment perspective, and you may want to look at having some kind of public forum on the topic that they're there to discuss. Again, public comment is an opportunity for people to provide you with their input during one of your business meetings. And it's up to you to determine if you believe they need 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but we have a 30-minute block. And so that would not need to change if you have, like I said, if you had more than 10 people, the chair and or the mayor would just modify the time that those individuals would have.
So, and thanks, Aaron. And to be clear, right, I'm hoping that we all understand. For a council action item, there would still be an unlimited amount of time. There could be 100. We've had 100 people outside, but there would be an unlimited amount of time for council action item for people to be able to speak. So that would not their ability there would not be abridged at all. We're just talking about the the public comment part that has nothing to do with what's on the agenda that night. We would be limiting that to 30 minutes. And, but on council action items, it could go an unlimited amount of time, if everyone understands that. Victoria.
That's a really good point, and in that case, are we also, when we do this, which I thought it was maybe a part of it, that all speaking would be extended to 3 minutes, including on action items, or no?
Likely, we try to keep those consistent when it comes to the comments under council action. We currently right now have 2 minutes along with public comment. So this is an impact that you may have on your business meetings to stay consistent, so we're not having two different rules, is if you're expanding from 2 minutes to 3 minutes for public comment, we should probably follow same suit on council action, which could be extending your meetings again. So I think from a policy perspective, you need to determine at what amount of time do you think is acceptable for the public to provide their input on a topic that's coming in front of you, or to provide a suggestion on a future topic that they'd like to see you handle.
Rick.
So over the years, when people do speak, a lot of the comments are identical and they just have the opportunity to express themselves, and I feel I would be supportive of 2 minutes only. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Are we?
Well, I
Yes.
just want
Sorry.
the motion to be clear that we're extending the 3 minutes to action items as well.
Okay. Eric.
I would also include that if they speak for 3 minutes and they have nothing to say, they usually yield that time anyway. So.
I've never seen it. Okay, we ready to vote on this? So, okay, so what we've got is all in one motion. We've got public comment cards for public comment, not action items. Public comment can come in right up until the public comment part of the meeting. It's going to be extended to 3 minutes. And is that regardless of how many there are? It could go more than the 30 minutes?
Yeah, I guess it would have to be, unless we want to extend on it to the same rules, keeping it consistent, that it's 30 minutes for action items as well, 3 minutes and 30.
Action items, we treat action items just like public hearings.
So we probably couldn't do that.
Technically, you wouldn't want to do that. You want to provide, like Councilor Pell mentioned, there could be a hot item under action that you want to hear from everybody. So I would not try to put limits on those, just like you don't on public hearings.
Okay.
But you can maintain or you can extend your section of your business meeting to how much time you wanted to dedicate to public comment before you modify the amount of minutes that you've provided to individuals.
I mean, to me, I would like to keep the public comment portion at 30 minutes. I wouldn't mind extending 3 minutes given to each person, and if there's less than 10, I mean, if there's more than 10 people for public comment, then it gets reduced. And Karen can do the math and set the timer, and still that way public comment is still 30 minutes, but, and anytime there's 10 or less people, which is usual for a public comment, they would get 3 minutes. If there's more than 10 people for public comment, which is pretty rare. But the council action items would then get 3 minutes, and they would have essentially an unlimited duration to hear everybody that we want to hear. So we would make 3 minutes for public comment, 3 minutes for council action items, with a maximum of 30 minutes for the public comment section of the meeting. And if that was a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'll take it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, and we need a second then on that. Second from Kathleen. Indra, did you have something to say?
Yes.
Please.
I do have something to say. So I'm good with that part. And I'm imagining that the mayor or council president, if they're running, can still vote, have council vote to extend, even though the maximum is 30. There could still be council vote to extend that at a meeting. Is that true?
That is true. You have the ability to modify the agenda, and that would require a majority of council to move that change.
Okay, so that's still possible. What I don't know if I'm objecting to or not, because Victoria, in your motion is to accept cards until 6. Until meeting time. I'm in favor of accepting cards up until public comment time. So I agree with the minutes, but it sounds like she has it just to go to meeting time, and I'm not in favor of that.
My understanding is it was all the way to public comment, right, Victoria? It wasn't just meeting time?
Yeah, I think that was inherent. What I'm talking about, the 3 p.m. for email and the 5 p.m. is people who want to come in to give Karen a blue card because they aren't going to be here at the beginning of the meeting. That's how I was understanding it. And to make it easy on Karen, just you need to email her by 3 Friday, or come in by 5 Friday if you aren't going to be here at the beginning of the meeting. Is that?
Not Friday.
On Friday.
No, it's on Wednesday.
On
Wednesday
I'm
of the
sorry.
meeting.
Excuse me. Wednesday. That's what I meant to say.
Okay, and could your motion include up to public meeting time to get blue cards, or do we need to do that separately?
It did. It did, right?
Her motion was to accept blue cards up till public comment period.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready. I think we're ready to vote then. So what we're voting on is basically, okay, we're going to extend public comment during public comment time and for council action items to 3 minutes. The blue cards can come in the day of, in person, up until that portion of the meeting. And if there's more than 10 people during the public comment portion, then the time will not exceed the 30 minutes. The time will just go down for each person. So I think that's pretty clear. Is that clear, Aaron?
Yes, Counselor.
Okay. So, Victoria?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Yes. Rick?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Joel? Yes. Indra?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. And that's what happens when Clint leaves early. He doesn't get his input on that. All right. Because that's not what he wanted. Okay. Do we have what else do we have today?
There is agenda review still, and then there is an executive session for property.
Okay, right.
And there's two motions in front of you, Counselor.
Sure. Okay, so for agenda review, do we have anything for Wednesday night? Anything that needs to be clarified? Eric?
The elevator one, sorry, I don't have it in front of me here, but there was only one bid for that, and I wanted to see, I know it's a pretty specialized field, but I was wondering if we can get some more discussion on that as far as what that all entails, and if we can get like an average cost nationwide, so that we can see that the bid is a good bid for that. I don't know if it's worth discussing, or if there's, I mean, I know it's a very special field, so.
Maybe if you can, Counselor, maybe staff can address some of that today, and we can come back with something more also, but.
So I actually can. We actually held off on awarding this bid to the contractor. We did a notice of intent, but then we sat down and negotiated with the contractor to make sure that the bid that they provided was cost effective and that it was a good price. The work is, as you well know, very complicated. They have to replace the cylinder. Our elevator is not, like, there's no cables at the top in an elevator house, so there's actually a hydraulic cylinder underneath that pushes it up and down. And so they have to remove the elevator car, remove that cylinder, put in a new cylinder pit, for lack of a better word, and a new cylinder, and then recondition it, and then bring all the controls up to modern controls. And we have to have that done. I think we're under, I'm going to get this date wrong, I think it's less than 18 months or our elevator gets shut off. It has to be modernized. So we feel that we've done a very good job of both advertising, soliciting for bids. We did only receive one, but there's not a lot of companies doing elevator work. And so we think we did also a good job of then negotiating with the contractor after the fact to make sure that the scope of work matched what we really need for an affordable price.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, thank you for putting that on the record. I wanted to make sure that the public was aware of that. There was only one bid, and that there was a good reason for it.
Okay, so we don't need to star that for Wednesday night?
No, but can we mention the price tag on that?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think it's like almost
it's
like 200-something thousand.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought we were just under 300,000.
Okay, I'm good if everybody else is good with that.
Okay. Any other agenda issues for Wednesday night? Anything? Okay. So we've got two motions here, and I guess I'll read them. Tourism Advisory Committee motion. I'll read them and then I'll ask a question as to what it means. Motion to recommend the listed changes of the tourism promotion grant to the City Council, adjusting the scoring application to reflect the following changes. More weight on off-season tourism, acknowledging previous awards and using inverted scale, using an inverted scale for previous awards not used, added points from multi-day or multiple events in the year, correct redundancy, modify location criteria to allow for anyone in Josephine County. Call to action, move to council workshop, move to council meeting, and take no action. And so do we discuss that now?
Yeah, ultimately, you can discuss that. I know that this is an item that's coming in front of you again. It's on the back of the agenda to be scheduled. We can incorporate those comments into the discussion when we move forward. So I don't know if you need to discuss that in detail unless you want to have a specific workshop just on their motions. We will address some of that when we bring that forward to you in an upcoming workshop.
Okay, so that's going to be covered in an ongoing workshop, and you'll defend what those terms mean, inverted scale and whatever.
If I could just add, so typically, we do the tourism grants twice a year. We do a spring and a fall. The fall one gets advertised typically around July 1 when they submit applications. We do like to let the applicants know what the criteria is when we put out the application. So I would just add, I guess, that that's the one piece that it would be a risk if since this is on the back and there is no date assigned, if it goes after July 1, we would be advertising the current standards.
So
we
what you're
wouldn't be
saying is-
advertising the ones that are proposed. So I think they were hoping,
Sure.
if the council supported it, to put for the fall round, for the fall cycle, to be able to do that. So I would just add that that's.
So I think what you're saying is that we need to get this, it was going to be brought forward in a workshop, so we need to have the workshop no later than June. So the
Yeah, I
council
think,
can.
I think one of our June workshops, if we can schedule it, that's what they would prefer, or we would be working off of our current standards.
Okay. So does council have an opinion on that? Do we want to try to get this on a workshop in June, or are we going to work on our current standards until we get to it? Victoria?
Well, I definitely do want to talk about it in a workshop, so if we could just move it to a June workshop, that would be great, so that we can accomplish both things. If we change anything, it'll be done before July, and then we will have the workshop. That's what I would be in favor of.
That seems reasonable, right? Okay. So in June,
We'll make note of that and bring it to the next agenda setting meeting.
Gotcha. Okay, so now, let's see, Historical Building Sites Commission, motion to recommend that City Council authorize the installation of a new historic marker to be mounted on the south elevation of the downtown Welcome Center as depicted in the attached exhibits. The marker supports the purpose statement of the Historic Buildings and Sites Commission in section 7.061 of the Grants Pass Development Code to, in quotes, strengthen public support for historic preservation efforts within the community, foster civic pride, and encourage cultural heritage tourism. Call to action, move to council workshop, approve the motion, or deny the motion. Joel?
I was there, so I know most about it, and Brad knows what I don't know, so we will be fully informed. It's a small amount of money. I think it's within Aaron's authority. And what it is, it's a little plaque cabinet, and inside there are historical photos. And so there's historical photos of a big tree being cut in the fall or laying down there and looking at you. And then there's another photo of somebody rowing on the
Rafting.
on the Rogue. There's a photo of downtown saying visitors have to register, especially if you're from California. There's a bunch of historic, I think there's what, 6, 7 historic photos that the commission recommended. And it's for like $30,000.
Oh, I think it'd be less than that. We don't have a full number, but the cabinet itself is around 3,000, and then we have installation, and then we have.
You're right. So it's going to be probably less than $5,000. So I would say it's a no-brainer.
So just data, where typically would that money come from? It's a small amount of money, but where does that money come from, Aaron or Brad?
Yeah, well, with the Welcome Center, it's typically going to come from the Welcome Center. Well, we don't have a downtown.
Downtown
budget.
services.
Yeah, downtown has its own budget.
The downtown services budget?
Yes.
For around $2,000 or $3,000?
I would say closer to 5.
Oh, 5, okay.
Or more, because we don't have a final on it, because the contractor who's building the cabinet is not willing to build the back of it because of how it attaches to the siding. He's concerned about that, so we're going to have to get somebody different to actually cut and mount, and we don't have that figure yet.
So roughly, Joel or Brad, how big is this thing?
No, I'd say it was maybe 3 feet by 3 feet, maybe 3 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah, it's a little bit wider than it is tall. Yeah, I think it's closer to that 90 inches wide by.
Their original photographs, they're not going to put the originals in there. They're going to put copies, but they were going to make copies of the original photographs.
Yeah. Well, Kathleen?
Should we at all run this by the tourism or Visit Grants Pass, since they're going to be running the Welcome Center, where they want to have it, or if they should have any say in it?
mean, that's really up to you. You know, it's the facility
Is ours.
is the city's. They just have the ability to operate inside of it. This is an exterior improvement.
Yeah, I could say that when I travel, whether it's Bandon or Bend or anywhere else, I absolutely love looking at historical pictures of the place I'm going to. I mean, to me, it's fascinating, and it just lands me in the place I am and kind of their history. So I like the idea. I would support it. But again, I can't see moving it to a workshop. There doesn't seem to be that much more to know about it. We can approve or deny the motion. So Seth?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the motion.
Okay. Second? Eric? Any more discussion?
I just have one thing to
Yes.
add. I want to confirm, Bradley, do you know for sure that downtown has the $5,000 for this? If not, then I'd want to confirm, and if it's okay that we have it, we'll move forward with the motion. If not, I think we need to come back to council and ask if they're willing to pull that from contingency to utilize those dollars.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I did not check for this last couple of months in the fiscal year. I do not know. I was just trying to answer the question where it would come from, typically, because
Sure.
I think that was the question, but.
Okay, so if we approve the motion, then you guys are just going to have to find if you've got the money, and if you don't, we'll get the bad news.
Yeah, if you approve the motion, we'll move forward with utilizing the downtown services dollar figure, which we should have that. I just didn't want to be in a spot where if we didn't, we'd want to come back to you and get authorization to use contingency funds for it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the other thing, Aaron, I know it's a little bigger pot of money, but I would guess tourism dollars could do it too instead of contingency, if we wanted to save contingency. Just a thought.
Okay. Further, Eric?
So just to clarify, the question that I have is, do we need to have this specified of where the funds are coming from? Or what, can you clarify again what the options are?
Yeah, currently right now, the funds are going to come from downtown services. Unless there aren't funds available, then we need authorization of council to utilize contingency funds or another source that I'd come back to you for that guidance.
Okay, are we ready to vote? We had a second, we had a motion and a second. So Seth?
Yes.
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 Kathleen?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Victoria?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Oh, Indra?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
unanimous. 8-0. And then, I'm sorry, I forgot what the next thing I was,
That would, you've just reviewed everything. It would now be concluding this meeting and moving into
Oh, the
executive
executive
session
session.
with the reading of the executive session.
no, we already had agenda. We talked about agenda, right? Did you have anything about agenda or no? Okay, okay. Or future agenda? No, okay, so we have a motion to adjourn this and go into executive session. Everybody says yes, thumbs up? Okay, we're now
Council
going to go
President,
into...
can you read the admonishment for executive session?
Yeah, where is it?
It should be right underneath the mayor's file.